Good evening, everyone. It's Thursday, September 17th, 2015, and we're calling the meeting to order. We have a number of issues that we're going to go through tonight. We have a couple of public hearings with respect to street openings. We have a request by Aquarion, similar matter for a street opening for a water main. We're going to have a discussion with respect to the Ridgewood Crossing marketing materials for the lottery, the affordable unit there. We're going to have a presentation from the Department of Public Works, Mr. Fernandes, and I don't know if Harry Sylvester is with him, but we're going to just once again take the public through the process that the town uses to evaluate the road work that it does and give the public an update on that. And then we're going to, at 8:15, and we're going to try and stick to this, we're going to reopen the discussion relative to the Bear Cove Park proposed regulations, which should be interesting. And then a town forum discussion. I don't believe there are any appointments tonight.
We have one appointment.
One appointment.
Right.
Okay. Oh, that's right, yes. And then we're going to adjourn. So I guess what we'll start out initially is the approval of minutes of August 10th, 2015 and July 23rd, 2015. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of July 23rd, 2015.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
How about August 10th? Can I have a motion on that?
Motion to approve the minutes of August 10th, 2015.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Questions from the public regarding items not on the agenda? Yes, Mr. Hersey, come up and identify yourself for the record, please.
My name is John Hersey. I live at 65 Hersey Street, 67 years. I asked for a records request, and I've got one, regarding the land behind the old DPW on Hersey Street. I got the paper. I asked for the dates and the amount that we've spent on the cleanup. And the question I have tonight is the site clean, or is the site still dirty? That's what I'm asking.
I would not be able to answer that with a yes or no at this point in time without referring to Mr. Alexiadis and whoever was charged with doing it. And I will do that, and we will respond appropriately at a later date.
The last thing you said?
We will respond appropriately at a later date.
Well, the last time I asked for something, the lights down on North Street, I asked a question. You said you get back to me because they're always on and some aren't on, and you never got back to me. That was June 18th, so I don't think that's very nice to put me off like that. And I got another issue.
I'm not really putting you off,
Well,
Mr. Hersey.
Nobody got back to me.
The problem is that the lights on North Street are in the light company has a lot to do with that, and we've made inquiries. I know I've made them personally, and there are a number of complicating factors there, and it's very difficult.
There is complicating factors. That's why I wanted to hear it from the Board of Selectmen. I already know the answer. That's why I asked the question. Okay? Now, the other, I want to cut it short.
Before you move on, just, Mr. Chairman, just so I know, who would be able to give us that? Does Ted know the answer, or is there a department that could give us the answer?
Let's find out.
Oh, I think it's well known.
Ted, who would be the department that would...
We have the records in our office. I can review the file and give you an answer on the property.
If you want to give me a call, if you're really that interested, you want to give me a call, I'll be glad to tell you.
Well, I'm interested in everything that people have to say. I don't know the answer myself, so I want to get you an answer, and I think we'll collectively do that.
Yeah, I mean, if you like...
Mr. Hersey has been provided for the board. He's been provided an answer. I think we want to get to, he's not happy with the engineer's statements and the process that we're going through to deal with the contamination on the former site that that his family owns.
Okay, yeah, it has to do with the engineer, but we'll go on. One other issue, I want to make it quick. Over here in the back of the town hall here, the rec barn, the parking lot that was built there. Okay, I've been following this since the middle of June, when we had 2 outside contractors come and put the material for the parking lot over there. And also, the trees that were cut down over there wasn't done by our tree people in town. It was done by a private. And I found that suspicious at the time, so I've been watching this, but I didn't say anything. I let it go. And then on August 3rd, before the planning board, they addressed, through the process of accepting and permitting, should I say, it was found out then that the parking lot was already built before the approval was given. Okay, so I find that very, very sad, that the town engineer built that without the approval. Okay? Did you know about that or not?
I know that the planning board approved the application that was submitted by the town.
I know, but the parking lot was built before it was approved.
I know that the planning board approved the application as submitted by the town, so presumably they looked into the details with respect to that construction and found it acceptable to the planning board.
Really?
I can only surmise that by a positive vote.
Well, let me just say something, okay? Because you're incorrect.
Okay.
And I'll wait for the answer, and I'll come back. And on the pollution, it's there or it's not, on Hersey Street. I have something for all of you. Here you go. Because, people like packets, so I'm going to give you some packets.
Is this a photocopy of the same thing you just handed to Mr. Gannon?
Thank you.
It's all the same.
Okay.
It's all the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hersey. Anybody else?
If we can get one of those copies from you guys for the record.
It's kind of hard to hear back here for some of us.
I'll speak up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Mayor.
Can have my copy. All right. Let's move to the next item then, if we could. We'll invite Mr. Regan and Mr. Sylvester to come up, join us at the table. There's a proposal with respect to the installation of 60 feet of a 2-inch gas main on Prospect Street.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi.
How are you?
Hello. My name is Dennis Regan. I'm the permit representative from National Grid. And tonight, National Grid hereby respectfully requests your consent to install and maintain approximately 60 feet more or less of 2-inch gas main in Prospect Street, Hingham, from the existing 2-inch gas main at Capt Thomson Lane, southerly to House 223 for a new gas service.
The microphones do not broadcast to speak to the crowd. The microphones are going right to the tape and off to the TV. So when you're at home and you don't hear anything, it's because someone's more than 12 inches away from the mic. So here, if you want to be heard, you'll have to talk up. So as Mr. Healy, Chairman, said, I would just ask you to talk up a little bit.
Would you like me to repeat that?
No, I haven't. You want to repeat it?
Yes, please.
National Grid hereby respectfully requests your consent to install and maintain approximately 60 feet, more or less, of 2-inch gas main in Prospect Street, Hingham, from the existing 2-inch gas main at Capt Thomson Lane, southerly to house number 223 for a new gas service.
Okay. Questions from
Your
the...
Honorable Board of Selectmen, we are the owners of 223 Prospect Street, so we are here obviously in support of this petition.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Just in terms of procedure, what typically happens is that the board asks questions and then opens it up to the public afterwards, so that if anybody wants to speak in support or in opposition or just comment generally, they'll have that opportunity. So that...
I apologize.
No, you don't need to. That's how it typically goes. That's how it's going to go tonight. So with that in mind, do my colleagues have any questions?
My question is just, Dennis, I know part of our process, and for the benefit of the audience, is that we also notify abutters. And I would just ask, have any of the abutters to this property directed any concerns or questions that we should be aware of?
I haven't heard from any of the abutters, and my name is on that list that goes out with my cell phone number, so I haven't heard from any abutters.
Okay, and Harry, you haven't heard?
No, just from the owners at house number 223.
Yep.
Was this initiated by the resident at that address for purposes of installing this gas line?
I assume that because we aren't allowed to speculate any longer because of deregulation, the customer would have to work something out with marketing and sales to pay for the cost of extending that main. Because if we extend a main and it doesn't get used, we have to throw the cost of that back at the ratepayer. So that's the reason for the payment system for the mains.
And I think Mr. Healy's question was that the owners who are here in the audience had initiated this request.
Is that accurate? Okay, thank you. I know that the issue of the age of the roadway is a factor that's considered by the DPW. Is that an issue in this case, Harry?
No, it isn't. It's scheduled for reconstruction at this time in 2018, so if they want to extend it, now's a good time.
All right, okay. Get it before it's fixed. Okay.
And there's just one question, and as it comes through the line, and is it all on the private property of the 223? Is it extensive?
That's the reason for the main, because if they were going to run it, they'd be touching into somebody else's private property. So we have to make sure the service itself is all on, either they're in the public road coming off the main, but it's all on the customer's property.
Fine, I was looking at the map, and I just wanted to make sure from the map I saw. Thank you.
Did you accept the motion?
Questions
Sorry.
from the audience? Yes, Mr. Hersey.
Yes, John Hersey. Dennis, I noticed that you come here monthly, once, twice, maybe 3 times a month.
Would you address the questions to the chair?
I'm sorry.
and then To the extent a response is appropriate, we'll do so.
Okay. I noticed that Dennis comes here once, twice, 3 times a month. And the question I have is, does the gas company have a schedule, like a 6-month schedule of streets they want to do in going forward, or is it just every month they have some, or?
Well, I think in fairness to Mr. Regan, and he's certainly, more than welcome to answer it if he can, but we're speaking to 2 discrete issues, and you're talking about a general policy of the gas company, and he may not be the appropriate person to address that question too, in terms of scheduling, an assessment of the condition of the existing gas mains, which may need to be replaced. I don't know if that's a fair question for him to answer, Mr. Hersey.
And actually, when Mr. Mr. Fernandes comes in to talk about the roads, I think some of this question may be answered then.
Actually, I think Mr.
Oh,
Sylvester might be able to
Okay.
opine on that for you right now, if you'd like.
great. Thank you, Harry.
If John's speaking about gas main replacement and a schedule for that, we meet with the gas company sometime generally in about December. We go over our road construction schedule. We go over their schedule for our requests of gas main replacements. If we have roads coming up that aren't on their schedule for replacement, we initiate talks of trying to get them to, alter their plan a little bit to put those gas mains on roads that are going to be reconstructed to be replaced. And we work out the finer details then. As far as when the actual work takes place, a lot of it is initiated on our schedule as far as road construction to get mains replaced before we go in there and start doing the work, which is during that current season. And they've been very cooperative. Very rarely does a gas main come in outside of or during the work schedule that we weren't aware of. It does happen on occasion, but...
And that wasn't always the case.
No.
This is a product that both Harry and Roger requested the Board of Selectmen, I believe in '08 or '09, was to align the town's paving schedule with the utilities so that we weren't paving a road and then the utility coming in saying we had a major gas leak. We've known about it for years, and now we're going to do it. And when they have gas leaks, if I'm correct, you have precedent. You can go right in and fix them.
Yes.
I also, Harry, if you could comment to the board, you do have a process where you track repeated gas leaks on your level and complaints, so that you use that to push the gas company to focus on a road if they know that they're out there.
And we do also.
Okay, that was a little bit too long, but I got the gist that in December, that you have a sit-down with Harry or whatever, and you discuss the roads that you'd like to, open up for the foreseeable future, maybe for the year. So you already have a schedule on any roads that you want to do?
Well, if you remember the times that I came here early in the season, in the early springtime, when I come in, I have quite a few petitions
Right.
That were worked on with Harry and the National Grid, so they can get the work lined up for the current construction season.
I understand that, but the point I'm trying to make is, could this here be microscoped down to maybe, you say, 1 or 2 meetings per season? We could get all this out?
I think, John, I think
Instead of so many meetings, because every time you come here, it costs the town money, because I believe he's getting 4 hours overtime. So
All right.
That's what I'm trying.
You're out of order there.
That's what I'm trying to get at. Thank you very much.
just to clarify, John's confused with replacing gas main, which is rotten and is being called to be replaced. And the request tonight is for an extension of a new gas main initiated by the customers who want to extend that main in order to get gas sometime during the season. We have, a handful of those every year with gas main extensions on new pipe on a good gas main.
And some of these residential requests are somewhat unpredictable. And Dennis, we're delighted to see you whenever you want to come in to talk. We are really pleased with the relationship we have with National Grid, where we coordinate the road building. It saves the town money. It helps us all coordinate. And unless there are any other, would you take a motion at this point? I'd like to make a motion to approve the request of National Grid to install and maintain approximately 60 feet of 2-inch gas main in Prospect Street. This gas main will originate from the existing main at Capt Thomson Lane and continue under the paved surface of Prospect Street for the entire length to completion at house number 223. This approval is subject to the stipulation of the Department of Public Works, including a letter dated August 3rd, 2015.
Second.
Discussion, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Moving on.
For coming.
Thank you.
Hey, Dennis?
The next matter is a public hearing on the request of National Grid to install and maintain approximately 80 feet of 2-inch gas main in Brewer Beach Road from the existing 2-inch gas main in Kimball Beach Road, northerly to House 20 for a new gas service. And I have a similar question here. It's my understanding that this has been before the board previously and decided on. Do we know who initiated this request?
I do not.
All right.
It's just a little clarification on this request. The original request was for a service coming off the existing gas main on Kimball Beach Road. This is to extend the main down Brewer Beach Road, so there is a little bit different as far as the request goes. The issues may be the same as far as granting that request, but this is for a gas main extension, the other one's for a gas service. Both of them we're going to lead up to the same house number.
20?
20, yeah.
Yep.
All right. Is there any discussion amongst the board?
Well, I just wanted, Harry, so I'm assuming that the people who own the property initiated the request?
I don't believe that's the case. I've spoken to the homeowners, and they haven't had contact with National Grid since the last time it came before the board, I believe.
Okay. So, and I may have asked this question with this week in house here, but so who did initiate it then?
I've asked the gas company the same question. They weren't really sure. They said it's only one house. They assumed it was a homeowner, but after speaking with the homeowner myself, that wasn't the case. It could have been lost through the marketing department and just fallen through the cracks. I'm not quite sure what the situation is behind the scenes at the gas company.
I tried yesterday to find out. I've been with them for 45 years. I couldn't find out where this initiated from. It's the second time, okay? I called some of the marketing people, some of the, we don't know where it was a package delivered to me, which the way I get every package, and I just put it together and move forward on it, so.
Has this ever happened before, Dennis?
I don't usually, it's not a question. I've had permits denied before and
Sure.
then been called back to a selectman's office and passed before from a
Sure.
denial, but that was for other reasons other than guaranteed streets.
But not knowing the source of the request is not something that has happened in your experience?
No.
But someone at the gas company, a JPM, PAC, drafted the plan? This is a new plan. It's not the plan that we had 3 years ago, right?
That's the person who drew the plan, but they just draw the plan, it gets sent to them, and just...
I think part of the reason why it fell through the cracks is I think everyone had Kimball Beach Road in their minds and focused on that on the last request for the service. And this request came in as Brewer Beach Road. I don't think anyone made the connection, especially being Brewer Beach Road is a private way. So I think it fell through the cracks, just because of the logistics of thinking of one road and have it coming down and applied for another road, even though it's going to the same house.
So, Harry, just so I understand it, because when we were talking about it earlier in the week with in-house here, I didn't understand that it was a different, and maybe no one else did, it was a different type of request. You said the initial request in 2012 was for a service?
For a gas service.
And this
was a main extension. Now, for the reason,
the
it benefits
difference
the
there?
gas company for a main extension because they can put other services off that main extension. A gas service would only be allowed on one service going from the existing main to the home, so,
Okay.
I don't know if marketing or engineering, or, I don't know how it would,
That initial one was 20 feet on the main, and then the service to get to the property.
And so this one allows multiple service?
This one was,
it gives you the ability, I think, to extend the main again, and then attach multiple services to it.
Multiple homeowners, is that what you're saying?
you would have to extend this again, to get to other customers.
But it gives them the opportunity, the ability to extend it.
But then-
You can't extend a main off a service. Because the service is what, half-inch, 1-inch line, something like
Yeah.
that.
Okay, I mean, I'm always willing to listen to what people requested. This is unusual where there's nobody identified as requesting this particular,
Well, after speaking with the homeowner, I mean, they were still interested in hooking up to natural gas, but they've made other provisions, I think it was propane they're using, and they're prepared to go into the road as soon as the moratorium is up, which I believe is 2017. So, I mean, and they were aware of the, grant tonight because they received, a letter.
so you did speak to them?
Yes, I did.
And they're not looking for this to be approved tonight?
Well, they said they did initiate this. I think they'd be happy if it did get approved, but they also told me that they would be, willing to wait till 2017.
Right.
In light of the fact of the last hearing, they presented a pretty good case and it was denied at that time.
Right. It's funny, I would just say this, and maybe this will be the last thing I'll say on it, is I happen to be watching that presentation back in 2012. Someone had to remind me what year it was, and I know it was a 2-to-1 vote. And I was very sympathetic to those folks at that time, and everybody has their own opinion. And I didn't foresee myself being in this position today, but I was prepared, if the folks were here, to give it every consideration. But I don't know what the board's pleasure is, but they're not here. So oh, you are here. Do you want to speak? I mean, is it all right? I didn't know he was here.
All right. Mr. Hurley, identify yourself by name and address for the record, please, sir.
Brian Hurley, 20 Brewer Beach Road. So I'll keep it brief. We did this 3 years ago. Grew up in this town. In fact, I think I went to junior high in this room. Joined the Marine Corps, came back, started a family here, built a house. Everything that happened was, as I'm sure you saw, we were a little bit disenfranchised by this town and what happened back then. The main issue here, we didn't make the request. We actually, the last time we talked to National Grid about this request was about 3 years ago. Shortly after our last hearing, they said, well, let's put something on the books. I think what Mr. Sylvester just identified is that this did fall through the cracks for a long time. I mean, we have propane. We're paying considerably more money for the propane than would be for gas. We have a big, massive eyesore in the back of our yard. But, we didn't make this specific request except for going to National Grid. I think I looked at my records yesterday, about 2.5 years ago, to set it up for when the moratorium was lifted. So certainly we would love to have access to this, but, and I've kept a log of all of the moratorium breaks that have been made over the years, mainly being on Beale Street. That was a big one. Shortly after we were denied, they decided to lift the moratorium for another street in Hingham. So I'm keeping track, but when our time's ready, then we'll take it. Or if you want to be so kind as to give us the opportunity now, that'd be great too. So thank you.
Mr. Hurley, I'm prepared to make a motion. I don't know what the vote will be, but I would be prepared to make a motion when the discussion is finished.
Mr. Hurley, thank you for coming tonight. It's a little curious to me that that you didn't initiate this request. That's just really kind of strange, and I thank you for coming, and I thank you and your family for I think the very gracious way that you've handled a lot of things. I seem to remember at the time you were traveling quite a bit. In preparation for this hearing, I will tell you that I actually invested quite a bit of time because I knew this was coming up. I requested the HCAM tapes, and I watched a little over 2 hours of the original hearings that took place in December. I went through all the correspondence, I went through the letters in the newspaper, and I did that to give this consideration. What struck me was at the time back in 2012, and I believe the moratorium, it's 10 months. I think you've probably got a big circle on your calendar for when it's lifted. I think it's in about 10 months. And I also thought about it, to be honest, when we got the request to open up Main Street for the Heritage Museum. That was one of the first things that came to mind because I remember that hearing very well. I voted as I did on the Heritage Museum because I thought it was a safety issue with respect to the water supply to preserve our town assets and our historical records. And I think, and Harry likes to say, you know, we open things up if there's an emergency or some significant benefit to the town. And to me, preserving these records fell into that category. At the time that your request was put forward, the main issue that you and your family were facing was that it was going into the winter months, and your oil burner had been removed, and you didn't know how you were going to heat your house. And again, in reviewing the tapes, the word that kept getting used over and over again by many people, including many of the people who spoke on your behalf, was the hardship situation that you were in at that time. I think we look at these on a case-by-case basis. I look tonight, and I don't think that hardship situation applies the same way it did then. I understand that the tank is in your backyard and that it is a bit of an eyesore. I actually went to your property yesterday, and I didn't go in the backyard, but I drove to take a look at it so that, again, I could sort of see it for myself. In my mind today, in September, I don't think that an emergency or a hardship situation exists that would incline me to, to give a variance and open up the road. You're certainly entitled to do it, but at this point, I would not be prepared to second a motion. And again, I would just thank you and your family for the very gracious way. I know this has been difficult, and appreciate the way you and your family have moved past. And so, thank you for coming tonight again.
Mr. Hurley, you and I don't know each other personally, but I certainly know of you and your family, having gone to school in this room too. I looked at the meeting. I looked at the reasons articulated by my predecessors with respect to the decision they made. I drove by the house before I came here tonight just to get a feel for the neighborhood. I see that there are a couple of street cuts. I'm not sure why they're there, but I'm sure that the highway didn't open that up gratuitously. You've got about 10 months to go, sir, before you can do your cutting.
I don't know if that's accurate.
I thought that the
I don't think it is.
moratorium was...
2017.
The road was paved in, I believe it was August of 2011.
We go by construction season, and the first year doesn't count as a year towards a moratorium, so the first year starts the following year.
12. Okay.
I just want to let the board know exactly, the whole story, that as far as the information that I have. I mean, I'm with Mr. Gannon. I mean, I sat at that meeting as a part of that hearing. They presented a great case, and no one protects these roads and wants to protect these roads more than I do. And I think that night I may have folded and voted to allow them to have that service, but that is behind us, and that's just a little bit of history. I have a number of requests that have been denied at my level on my desk in a folder, probably maybe a couple of dozen. What happens is the request comes to me, I deny them, and if they want to, follow up on that, then they come to the Board of Selectmen asking for a hearing, which you will have to hear, and then you guys decide whether you want to allow the road to be open or not. Those 2 dozen requests haven't come forward. I think most of them are still waiting for gas services. The town of Braintree, who was involved with a town-wide town repaving program over a period, I think they have 6 years, and they have 3 more years to go, has initiated a 10-year moratorium in that town just recently. So, I mean, it has become an issue throughout the South Shore, at least, as brand-new roads being cut frequently by utility companies. We have a great program, a great working relationship with National Grid, Aquarion Water, as well, as far as getting mains that need to replace before we pave these roads, hoping that these roads won't be cut in the near future, especially the need to cut them within that 5-year moratorium. That being said, that's about as much information I can give you to base your decision on whether to make a motion, whether to vote on a motion, however you want to handle it, but that's the information that I have. And if you have any other questions regarding that, I'll try to do the best I can to answer them.
Mr. Chairman, just one quick thing. I do view this as a hardship for you, Mr. Hurley. I do. I remember well 2012, and there was at least one vote on the board for you on that night, and it was very compelling. And I don't think it's too late to do what I think is the right thing, and that's why I'm going to make a motion. But you're going to have to wait almost 2 years more, and you're incurring major costs through what I consider no fault of your own. And this may be an occasion where the board could, if it chooses, to allow you to do this. So I mean, I'm going to make a motion. I can't speak for anybody else.
Can I say something or not?
You've been speaking pretty regularly, but go ahead.
This doesn't happen just with a gas company. This happens on sewers too, because Ship Street and North Street had a moratorium, and you opened up there to put a stud, and you didn't do both the streets for sewer, Cottage Street too, until a year later. So I think there's 2 sets of rules here, and this was a sewer department doing the job. I don't think it's right. I think it's 2 sets of rules here. I'm sorry.
You take a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Fire away.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to move to approve the request of National Grid to install and maintain approximately 80 feet of 2-inch gas main in Brewer Beach Road from the existing 2-inch gas main in Kimball Beach Road, northerly to house number 20 for a new gas service. This approval is subject to the stipulation of the Department of Public Works, including letter dated June 23, 2015.
There being no second, we'll move on to the next matter.
Mr. Alexiadis, I'm going to ask you to, I would like to follow up with National Grid. I feel like this board has just been set up to be embarrassed. We've brought a homeowner into this. I think it's outrageous. And I would like to understand how a request, and I don't think this has to do with, I just want to understand how this request came here and how a request could be made on a homeowner's behalf without the homeowner being informed. And Dennis, I understand that you're only part of the process, but I feel
I can communicate with National Grid and try to determine that.
There appears to be a little bit of malicious action here, and I'd like to understand what it is.
And Dennis, let me just say this, that I have no idea what my colleague is saying, but if you find there's something, unusual about this, and somebody has set somebody up, you should please let us know. But I got this packet, I spoke to my town administrator, my assistant town administrator, didn't know a lot about it, but did remember it, and my memory was vivid as to how I thought I would handle it back then. So however it gets here, Mr. Hurley, I wanted you to know that you had someone speaking for you, and I don't think that anybody set anybody up, but Mr. Regan will tell us what happened, because none of us seem to know clearly.
I wasn't able to find out in the last couple of days,
If you could.
I reached out to
Sure.
just about everybody that I know.
Thanks very much.
And I'll keep doing it.
Anything you could, we'd appreciate. Thank you.
Very much. Okay, next matter on the agenda is a public hearing with respect to the request made by Aquarion. And do we have a representative here from Aquarion? We do. I'd ask you to step up and join us at the table, and we'll discuss what you want to propose to do. Oh, that was fun.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Farrell, Director of Operations of Aquarion Water Company. With me this evening is Steve Olson of Environmental Partner Group. He's the design engineer for the project that we're requesting grant a location in Pine Street in Hingham. And we are proposing to install 450 feet of an 8-inch main down Pine Street that has an existing 2-inch water main that is that has had many breaks over the past several years. It's undersized, and so we're also taking the opportunity to look into installing fire hydrant there for fire protection.
Questions?
Do you say there's a fire hydrant there?
No, there's no fire hydrant there now. It's currently only a 2-inch main.
Will any work be done on Oak Street down there?
No, I don't believe so. No.
What's the condition of the water main on Oak Street? Any idea?
I am not familiar with it. I'd have to look into it.
Is this, and this is included as part of the capital plan?
Yes.
And just out of, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but approximately how much will this cost to do?
What's our total? About $160,000.
$160,000. So you folks spend about, I think the capital plan's a little over $1 million, so this is...
About 1.6 million.
1.6 million, so this is about 10%. Thank you.
Questions from the audience? Mr. Clark, stand and be recognized. How are you? Identify yourself by name and address, please.
Jim Clark, 79 Tower Road. This is just a question for the aquarium because I tripped over it today in my files. I have a petition signed by everybody on the street requesting that they upgraded the pipe on the street and added a hydrant up next to the house that burned down. And
on your street?
Yeah, and that was, petition is from 1973. It hasn't been done yet, so maybe they can move it up on the list.
I appreciate your feedback. I'll have to look into that.
Do you know what street it is?
Tower Road.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Would anybody else care to comment? Can we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the request of Aquarion to install and maintain approximately 450 feet of new 8-inch diameter high-density polyethylene water main, along with fire hydrant and associated service connections and fittings in Pine Street, Hingham. This water main will originate from the eastbound travel lane in Hull Street and continue northerly on Pine Street to completion adjacent to house number 40. This approval is subject to the stipulation of the Department of Public Works, including letter dated August 18, 2015.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Next item on the agenda. We are going to hear from...
You're going to hear from Sharon Napier of the Housing Authority.
Okay, Ms. Napier.
Join us.
Welcome.
Good evening.
How are you
Another
tonight?
board member you're going to bring with you?
Chairman Watson?
Jim's coming up.
Is it here? I'm deaf in this ear, so that might be a good thing. First of all, thank you, Betty, for accommodating me early on in the agenda. This is my third night in this town hall.
That's right. Last night she brought a very small person with her, but no small people tonight.
My granddaughter wanted to see what I did.
She was fascinated.
She was very fascinated.
You did very well, by the way, let me tell you.
Didn't she?
Yes, you did at the meeting.
Right.
I was thinking, preparing what I needed to say tonight, and I always do better with script. Otherwise, I get too emotional about what we're doing with this housing stuff.
But we're here to
The last-
discuss a lot of it, and you're right on top of it.
Yeah. The last time I presented something like this was in 2003 in the town of Sandwich, where I used to live. And I was on the newly formed Affordable Housing Trust at the time. And I recently emailed a colleague and friend of mine. We were discussing these lottery and these affordable pieces going before the Selectmen. And he reminded me of a presentation that we did. And I started out, I was very nervous, and I said, well, I am here to talk about the A word. Just like this. Well, back then, the A word was the affordable housing, and it was after they had talked about projects and tenements, and then it went to low income, and then it was affordable became that term. So at any rate, thank goodness the A word has evolved into a positive aspect in communities like Hingham. The Affordable Home Ownership Program at Ridgewood is a wonderful opportunity for baby boomers, 55 plus, to own an affordable townhouse over there. It's the third and final affordable property over there that is being marketed as a lottery. We are the lottery agent. So back in July, we had submitted a final draft, if you will, of an affirmative marketing plan as well as an application package for the final affordable townhouse. I would also just let you know a little bit of my background. I've been doing this for about 25 years, and I also worked at the Department of Housing and Community Development. And I know folks who work for the local initiative program at DHCD. I've also done housing consulting for some other communities over the years. One of those communities is Milton, and we drafted a package. This is almost the identical package that we drafted that was approved by the Department of Housing and Community Development, as well as Mass Housing gave their blessing. They don't need to, but it's nice to have both of them. At any rate, we also worked closely with SEB, Brian Engler's company. They are very experienced at doing lotteries, and we are the monitoring agent for Derby Brook as well, and this was also the template that we used for them. We tweaked it a bit. So what the department is looking for, there's been some new initiative for the affirmative fair marketing piece, and it is actually they would like an overreach to contact and to allow those households that would not ordinarily be able to live in a community such as Hingham. So what's happened is the original selection plan called for, we always like to have a preference and priority. We always like to have folks who are living in the community take advantage of these opportunities. However, that has changed a bit. Now what they're looking at is, again, the overreach for folks to have an opportunity to come back into Hingham, if you will. So the way that the plan is set out, the affirmative fair marketing plan, it goes far beyond in order to reach those who may not ordinarily or may not otherwise have opportunity to live in Hingham. And that's a given. There's no way around that. You can't have 100% local preference priority. They won't allow it. Mm-hmm. So at any rate, all that is needed from the board is to just make a motion to accept it and pass it along to DHCD. They will make whatever corrections and recommendations that are needed. I've also had some informal conversations with Janice Lesniak on the phone, asking her what we need to do, because we all had a residual waiting list from the original lottery, and by statute, after 3 years, it's stale and you can no longer use that, so we have to start a whole new lottery process. There are no preferences and priorities. It will actually be the first one picked out of the hat will have the opportunity to purchase this 55 and older affordable property.
One unit.
One unit, yes.
Yeah, a lot of procedure for one unit, but it's the last unit of the 3 affordable ones in
But
that
this
project.
can serve as a template for future ownership units.
It certainly can,
No.
and yes, it can.
Has this been okayed by our?
Yes.
Okay.
And I would,
Just to answer, yes, it has been okayed by Real Estate Council.
Okay.
Sorry. I know that we're familiar with each other, and people might not understand what we just...
Sorry about that.
and I would just, for the benefit of the audience, what we're doing here is Ridgewood Crossing, this is the third and final affordable unit, and in order for affordable units to count by the state as part of our affordable housing, we have to make sure that we're in compliance with all of the different processes. Sharon's much more familiar with all those processes, but essentially, if we as a town don't go through the marketing and the lottery process in a way that DHCD finds acceptable, at the end they could say, well, you've got this unit, but we're not going to count it as an affordable unit towards your 10% threshold. So the reason that we're taking great care and we bring this here is so that as we're making as we're doing all this work, it is counting towards our affordable housing stock.
And if someone has questions, would they contact your office?
Absolutely, and they have been. We've been swamped with telephone calls. The other piece that I'll add, because we had started working on it, I think it was late spring perhaps, there are dates in there, and the only thing I would say, if you accept it and change those dates, TBD, and DHCD will accept TBD on there.
Will this be posted somewhere, so if somebody simply wants to read what this contains, they can look to a website?
They absolutely can, however, not until DHCD has approved it.
All right.
And after that, there's a whole listing of agencies, community agencies, et cetera, that we literally, my staff and myself, make phone calls and fax the ad, and then in our office, we have the applications. We will also distribute the applications and the ad along with the criteria, the qualifications, to the town hall, to the library, to the senior center. There are a number of venues where we'll drop it off.
Actually, you have it in your package. It's about
Yes.
4 pages, 8.5 by 11, double-sided, which lists all the places that they're going to be advertising.
Mr. Chairman, I guess that's quite similar to what we've used in the past.
Very,
It's quite, I mean, it's nothing new in the format
no,
or in the procedures.
no.
When do you anticipate the drawing or the lottery occurring?
It all depends on when DHCD approves it, and then there's a 60-day advertising period. So, and I also have to have staff and availability.
Early
I need
next
to
year.
do that. So
Is
we
it
can
likely
do it
that...
fairly quickly. Yeah,
Okay.
once it's approved, we're all ready to go. We've done these things before, and my staff is well-trained in them, in these lotteries.
And I just say, I know that it's important to do it right so it counts, so to speak, but in my experience in the community, there is a need for this type of housing. So I applaud you and thank you for the effort. I know it's not easy, I know it's a lot of work, and it's
Thank
only
you.
one unit, but it's the last of three.
No one would ever have guessed that it would have taken, how many years was it? 2007, I think, 2008? They did the first lottery, and typically, there's a very short time frame before the third is constructed, and this has just been, it's unusual, but it's important, and here we are. We're ready
So
to
that's
roll.
what it was that they weren't all available at one point? Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would also like to recognize the efforts of the planning board. This was a difficult project to permit. They did a good job on it.
Absolutely.
I don't see anybody wanting to talk on it, so why don't we do a motion?
I'll do a motion to approve the marketing materials for the Ridgewood Crossing Lottery.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much
Thank you both for coming in.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Sharon.
Have a good evening.
Meeting everyone.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay. Mr. Fernandes and Mr. Sylvester, up and at 'em. How are you, gentlemen? All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the part of the meeting where we're going to have a presentation from the DPW, which I continue to refer to as the Highway Department, but we're going to go through the road construction protocol and where we are and how we arrive at what we do and the rationale behind it. It's very informative.
Before we start, just a quick question, Ted. I had requested some paper from Betty. She said she got it this morning. I didn't see it in my packet unless it's in part of the presentation.
She didn't mention anything to me. What were you looking for?
About the field roads. I was just trying to get...
It's included in the presentation.
All right, great. Thank you.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, and
Floor is
thank you.
yours.
I hope you like the mood lights, because we're going to talk about something very exciting, roads. I know everybody's excited to hear about our roads. You haven't heard enough about them today, I guess. But so we start off, just to give you a little quick background. This presentation is something we typically offer to the Board of Selectmen, usually in April, at least once a year at a minimum. This presentation will be, and prior presentations are, on the town website. So if you're curious about looking at the presentation, again, we'll make sure this one gets posted, but there's one that's there now that, again, was posted back in April of 2015. So this first slide just indicates the type of infrastructure we maintain. This is strictly just the roads, doesn't include drainage, sidewalk, or anything else that you might typically find in a roadway. And the town maintains about 110 miles of roads. There's more than 110 miles of roads in Hingham, but some of that belongs to the state. It's Mass DOT roads, Derby Street being an example, Otis Street, Summer Street, some of those locations within the town limits, but not something that we take care of per se. And then what we did here in the slide is we assign a value to that, meaning that if we had to go out there and replace all those roads, the whole 110 miles of roads, what would that cost, the residents or to sort of do that? And that value is $122 million. We're not doing $122 million worth of work, obviously, but that's just an indication of the worth or the value of just that infrastructure. So then this is a common question, how do our roads get selected? And I know there are a lot of folks here in the audience that have that question. And as you can see, there's a process. It is the measurement is quantitative and qualitative in the sense that we look at a couple of different things. First, we evaluate the road's condition, the safety, as well as structurally. Meaning, when we say structurally, that's very simply just is the road in structurally bad shape. Are there a lot of potholes? Is it falling apart? What does that look like? Second, we balance the cost of reconstruction versus maintenance. And we'll talk about that a little more as we go through the presentation. And incidentally, if the selectmen want to have a question in the middle, don't feel like you can't interrupt me. That's okay.
Thank you.
And then we coordinate the pavement resurfacing, whether the street, water, sewer, and underground utilities. Harry just mentioned that, and it was really appropriate. Just prior to this presentation, you heard the water company come before you. We heard an issue on National Grid and gas, and what we do is annually we meet with all those utility companies, and we begin to structure our plan, our 5-year plan, and then we refine that as we get closer to that year, and we try to make sure that the pipes in the ground are in the condition that they need to be so that we don't rip up roads. I know that everyone here has driven in a different community, and it looks like a brand new road, and there's 10 trenches across the road. Well, it breaks my heart. It should break their heart. It's not the right way to sort of take care of our infrastructure, especially given what it costs. So we also consider the usage. By that we mean, are we looking at a road that's a mile long, and at the end of this road there are 2 houses, and the people that use this road are 2 people? It's not that we ignore that's not part of the equation. It's that we also consider what's the total public benefit. Are we talking about a collector road where thousands of people use this road, or is it a road where just a couple of people are going to see a benefit from that? What are the speeds associated with that road? If you drive over a road with a bump in it or a pothole going 40 miles an hour versus one that's maybe 20 or 15 miles an hour, I think we can all agree that's a different experience. So we consider where those roads are. And then we coordinate the construction by targeting areas. One of the most difficult things to explain to people who don't sort of do this for a living is the logistics associated with doing some of this work, meaning we've all seen pavers and paving operations on the road. They're large machinery, a number of trucks, rollers, typically a crew of 6 to 10 people, depending on the size of the job and what's going on. There's a economy of scale when we can go into a neighborhood and do multiple roads, as long as the funding is available, and target that neighborhood, because it's very difficult to pick up that operation and move it from location to location on a whim. So we have to try to target and coordinate those locations so that logistically it works. This is another sort of sometimes difficult thing to sort of digest, and it talks about the effects of deferred maintenance. The curves that you see represent, first the red line represents what happens to a roadway if you just ignore it, meaning you put the pavement down, you go away, and then 20 years or 25 years or maybe even 30 years, depending on the amount of traffic, the road follows that red curve. It deteriorates, and then it deteriorates quickly once it gets past 75% life expectancy. Or we can say, before it gets to that point, we're going to do something about it. We're going to put a new surface on that road. We're going to fix that aspect that's deteriorating. And if we do that, you can see that the cost is a lot less than if we wait till the thing needs to be fully reconstructed. The facts are, and you can see at the bottom, the U.S. Department of Transportation studies show, so this is not Roger's opinion, this is an industry-wide opinion, that every dollar spent on preventative maintenance treatment saves $6 to $8 in future rehabilitation costs. So that means, very simply, that somewhere between 1 to 8 times the cost to reconstruct a road versus doing something before it goes south, before it gets really bad. And when we'll see more in this presentation, so part of what our responsibility is to sort of make sure that that doesn't happen is to catch these roads before they get beyond that 75% sort of deterioration.
Roger,
yes,
just on that, so maybe everybody understands, based on that graph, is it 10 years is the 75%?
It indicates at the bottom that it is over 10 years, but a lot of that depends, again, on the amount of traffic and the type of road it is. It's a good question, because if you live on a residential road, and even on airport jobs that I've done, depending on the type of planes that they fly, but if you live on a residential road, or if it's a commercial or collector road, we'll call it, what tends to kill pavement, obviously it ages over time, but it's truck traffic. The loads, the high-pressure tires that you see now in trucks. As a matter of fact, when you're designing roads, when you drive up and down the highways, they measure those and called EASLs, estimated single axle loads, and the correlation between the effects of 10,000 vehicles, literally it's that kind of number, versus one truck sort of it's that kind of, it's really astounding what trucks and heavy loads do to roads. So it's contingent upon that kind of stuff.
Speak a little louder, please.
Sure. I thought I was talking loud already, but I'll try my best. I'm sorry, was there another question?
You only have to look at the roads in Crow Point.
Yeah.
And you look at all the construction and all the building that's gone on in Crow Point. Mm-hmm. Those roads are old, but also the amount of deterioration in those roads as Crow Point has changed over the last 20 years is considerable.
Right, and if you look at the state level, in terms of how they build their roads, the pavement's a lot thicker, there's a lot more expense associated with that because they see a lot of that type of traffic.
So when you say that the state builds it differently than we do?
Well, when I say because of the type of use, it's like anything else, more load on a road, or more load on a foundation, or more load on a bridge, you have to build it so that it's able to take that load. So if you were to look at I-95, the cross-section of that pavement might be a foot thick, 10 inches thick. We don't build our roads that thickness. One, it would be cost prohibitive, but two, we don't see the kind of traffic loading that you would see on an interstate.
Although we do require a 2-foot subbase on the planning board subdivision rules and regulations, and that's designed to get a 50-year road.
We require a good subbase, yes.
We do.
But when we're rebuilding a road, we're rebuilding a road sometimes based on what's existing there, and we need to, sort of figure out how to make that work, because we cannot go into every single road and rip out 2 feet of gravel. You might imagine that would be a problem.
Do we have a guideline, a state guideline as to how much do we have to do, or does it depend town to town?
There's no state guideline per se. Each community needs to sort of, the folks that are managing that for them need to understand what type of road and what they need to do in order to build a road so that it lasts. So there's no cookie cutter per se. There's industry standards, certainly. Planning board does have a standard that exists. Absolutely. We require, more than maybe what we would put in the road, but the intent is that when the developer walks away, he's constructed something that's going to last as long as we can possibly make it last before the remainder of the taxpayers have to pick up the tab if it's an accepted road.
And I'd just like to point out that even when the road's being built, there are certain procedures that are required to be in place, so those heavy trucks that pass over the road as it's being constructed, the damage to the roadway is minimized. So, right. I mean, it's something that we're aware of right from the outset of any road being constructed, certainly maintained.
Sure.
Well, I just want to say that, a lot of our work is reconstructing roads, especially in the north end of town where you're talking it's over 300 years old. Our next project is going to be up in Crow Point off, Whitten Ave and Page Street and that whole section of roads. That's a clay drumlin, as was Otis Hill. We could never in our wildest dreams go up there and take out 2 feet of clay and bring in 2 feet of gravel. So what we plan on doing, what we've done not only in the clay drumlin, this Otis Hill, but also in Bradley Hill, we dig it out and the clay's got to stay there. The clay's a fine sub base as long as you keep it dry. We put slope drains in, keep the sub base dry. Then we do we grind up the existing pavement, make a good, base to put the pavement on. And after last winter, as cold and as mean as that winter was, and we saw frost going down to depths that I haven't seen in 37 years working here. Very little crack reflection on Otis Hill. So what we're doing to these clay drumlins, putting these slope drains in, has been very successflow. And
are they subsurface?
They're subsurface. We put in a couple of pipes on the side of the road, backfill them, the perforated pipes. Sure. Backfill them with stone, some fabric, tie them into the existing drainage system. The groundwater comes out of the properties in rainstorms or whatever, especially on the positive grade side of the road. Hits the catch basins, drains, and they drain away. So it does keep it dry. But we are dealing with reconstruction and not brand new regular construction, which there's a difference.
I mean, and I think that goes to Mr. Gannon's question. What do you do on every road? Well, here's a situation where we have to do something that's a little different, that, maybe the town of Braintree doesn't have those kinds of issues, but in some locations in town, we have those issues, so we have to take it on a case-by-case basis. I jumped ahead, sorry, folks. Here we go. Okay, so, what we do in the town, what we do to sort of measure the quality of our roads is we assess a value from 1 to 5 on every road in the town of Hingham. Every road, every section of road in the town of Hingham has an asset value set to it. 5 being failure, and by the way, some places call 5 really good. It's semantics, 1 really bad. And those ratings range from excellent, good, fair, poor, and failure. And we started measuring this in 2011, and as you can see, in 2012, 2013, 2014, 15, 16, we see a progressive improvement in the excellent road category. We see what looks like a little decrease in the good category, but certainly a shift from fair to poor into excellent. And that's where the maintenance comes in. So that there's a analytical sort of literal measurement that we're able to do and see whether or not we're getting ahead of the game, so to speak. Do you have this in your present? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm just commenting on the temperature.
Mr. Gannon, this is what you were looking for. So what this really does depict is, where we were in 2011, 42 roads that were considered good, 18 poor, and as we move forward, we see those numbers dropping. The effort of the program that's been going on now for about 6 years, yeah. To attack the roads before they go into failure and drive our costs.
Which is good. What I was really looking for, this is helpful though, is what roads specifically were in failure, because I've seen, we've had people come in, and it's no reflection on anybody in this room, it's just that I'm just concerned and trying to make it, with the money we have, the best we can do as everyone else is. And I didn't know which roads were actually in failure, and I'm assuming it's in one of the charts.
We have, like I said, we have a list of those roads. It's every road in the town of Hingham, and we can provide that list, and if next to that road you see a number 5, then it's not where it needs to be in terms of quality. I think we provided, this actually has a list of some of those roads that we've done that were in failure. I think Mr. Gannon's received that already, and the pie chart that you'll see in a moment will illustrate that in a second. If you just bear with me 1 second.
Sure.
But, so with respect to considerations, other considerations, there's the funding mechanisms, meaning how, what's available, how do we get, in terms of money, how do we get that? Manageable work levels, that's another thing. We've discussed and we've looked at, geez, Raj, if we give you $2 million tomorrow, what's that going to do for us? Well, it's going to kill us first, because $2 million is a lot of work on top of the existing 1.3 or so that we do. It means that a lot of the town would be disrupted. So we need to have a manageable amount of work in order to sort of make sure the quality is good and not sort of stop everyone from commuting in the town of Hingham during that construction period. And that actually addresses that next bullet point, which is the work implications on the community. In terms of funding, this is the two funding sources that we see. We see Chapter 90 money that comes from the state, and we don't know from year to year what that's going to mean in terms of funding. So I can't tell you today for sure what we're going to see in Chapter 90. The blue graph that you see illustrates some of the volatility, right? 1 year we're at $413,000, and then just recently Governor Baker released what he called the Baker Relief Fund, which represented an additional $376,000. Plus, we saw what they referred to as a rapid winter recovery allocation, which was like another $113,000. So we were we were above $1 million from Chapter 90 in 2015, and that's one of the issues that we struggle with when we put together our lists. Some of that needs to be fluid as well, because from year to year we can't guarantee what's going to come to us in terms of state funding. The other funding source is, of course, town funded. This is the money that you pay directly out of your pockets as residents. In 2006, 2007, 2008, you were putting in about $60,000 a year. A decent sized road, and we'll look at some of the costs, but that barely does a road in the town of Hingham. And we've seen a progressive increase, but it represents a fraction of 1/6% of the total asset value, but that's what you've paid for so far. So we've begun to sort of see some increases, and we're hoping that there's a potential for that going into the next year.
I'm just going to pause you for a second here, Roger, because I think it's important for the board to get a little perspective here. So Roger brought this, and Harry brought this proposal to the board. I think it was the board's request back in 2008 or 9. We remember what 2008 or 9 was. If we don't, I'll remind you, it was fiscal calamity and the end of the world, as some people had thought from the economic standpoint. And budgets were pretty tough. Town of Hingham wound up not laying people off. We rifted some people through voluntary separation, and we made it through that difficult time and began the process of building up. So you could see, we went from 60 to 134 to over 200 up to 284 in a period of time, the tail end of that cycle, where most towns still weren't able to get there. And this was a lot of pain. Remember we asked departments to cut budgets across the board. It was to sort of recycle some money here, because I think Roger pointed out to us that $60,000 a year is not sufficient to manage a $122 million road asset base. And so I will say that 284 is better, but we need to do a little bit better.
And I would just, add from my advisory experience, I think one year, Roger, when you came to us, what I remember is that on average, we need to spend $1.1 million, regardless of the source of funding, to kind of keep everything where it is. and that in the years when we're not investing that much in the roads, we're falling further behind. In the last couple of years, when we typically do our budgets, we ask everybody to do a kind of a level services budget and then say if there's something more you want to do. And in the last few years, Roger has asked for $200,000, $300,000 on top of what's there, and as a town, we haven't been able to do that. One of the thoughts I have for this year's budget cycle, and I think at a previous meeting, I mentioned that I think I'd like to get that green bar a little bit higher. Maybe this year, instead of asking for an additional $300,000, because that's just a big number to swallow, maybe we increase that number by $50,000, and maybe the year after that by 50 more thousand. So it's one more road or one more. Sure. I feel like we're for the last couple of years we're sort of stuck at the number we're at, and
I think you're correct, because what happens is I put the budget forth, Roger and I sit, and he tells me this is what we need, and so generally I'll put forth, if you've seen my recommendations, I've recommended this as additional monies each year, but it comes down to the process as we move through the budget, we got to make choices. We got to make choices between how much funding we're going to provide to the police, to the fire department, to the library, to the schools, DPW, and roads or maintenance. And so it's just there's not generally a particular entity or program that's going to be impacted, and it's just an easier one to pass on. It appears
especially
maybe a commitment to do a smaller amount for a few years. I know that we did that successfully at the library with books. I remember they were running short on a book budget, and they asked for a commitment of $10,000 a year for 3 years, and we did that. I think it's important to give them planning tools so they know what's coming.
Just so people know, I mean, the board, even last year, we recognized the need for additional funding, and I think Ted and I talked, and I'm sure Paul and Mary's been involved in it as well, in both capacities, is we're looking for more money, and I know this winter was horrendous, and if there was any hope that we could do something later on, it kind of evaporated with all those storms. But I think we're all advocating for that in whatever numbers we can get.
I will say that that plan that Ted just talked about, we presented to town at a town forum, and the selectmen are aware of it. Looked at sort of getting us to that place in 25 years, and you can see some of those intermediate funding sources and how that $751,000 became available. And so we've had some, I don't know if you want to call it good luck, the $386,000, but we projected, if you calculate where we are in terms of road quality, we projected that it'd take 25 years for us to get where we need to be, but it's actually, we did the math before we came here today, and we're right around 22 years. So we saved a couple of years. We're trending in the right direction. But obviously, there's there's a sense here maybe that it's not happening. 22 years is a long time, and I get it, but at least it's headed in the right direction, I hope. So this is just a list of the roads we completed. A rough and tough cost at the bottom in terms of what it takes to do these roads, the types of construction that we did. To Mr. Gannon's question, what kind of are we doing roads that are failing? Well, if you see reclaim and repave, anytime we're ripping up and redoing a road, it's beyond a maintenance system. If it's within a maintenance system's grasp, then we don't do that. So there's a balance there between reclaim and repave, and there isn't a balance, incidentally, that we target year to year, that it has to be 40% one or 60% the other or 30% and 70%. It really depends on year to year and where we are and all those other sort of characteristics that we need to consider as part of the work.
Roger, just so on that, and maybe this is part of the answer, and under schedule, what is the significance of those numbers?
Conditions. All right, let me see. Let me catch up where you are.
Just where it says 5.
Yeah. So that was kind of a leftover. So what that means is where we're going to go first during the construction season. Okay. This is location 1, road 2. We're gonna reconstruct it in this sequence.
So this isn't failure number.
No, I'm sorry.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, and this is another document we plugged it in here, and I probably should have clarified that, but this is a document that we use at the beginning of the year when we sit down with the contracts. Obviously, where do you want to start first? Here's where we want to go. Here's a list of roads that we want to target first.
And this is completed.
Nothing gets by you, I noticed that. Go ahead.
Try. But I'm just trying to help, too, by the way. I just, are any of those roads that were done in 15 considered failure roads?
Oh, yeah, any road that you see the word under status, let me see if I can get this pointer working. I'll probably, but is this the one? Yeah, I got it. So here where it says status, where we say reclaim and repave, those roads were in bad enough shape. For example, Cottage Street. I don't know if you had a chance to drive up Cottage Street this year, but it was in pretty rugged shape. I mean, the sewer department went in. There was a capital project to put sewer there, and so that particular location, is an example of where it was beyond the maintenance system. So we had to reclaim it. So by definition, it's a failing road. It's done.
So is that, go ahead,
Sorry, go ahead.
just one last question.
Sure.
So, and thank you, that's very helpful, I'm sure, for everybody. So when it says reclaim and repave, will that correspond or correlate to a 5?
Yeah.
So whatever chart I look at, I can look at that road, and back then it was a 5. For
Or
purposes-
4.
Or 4. Could be a
It's
4.
4 or 5.
Because because that's another. We look at a road, the way it's looked at. It is subjective in a sense, right? So you're basing that on our experience, so Harry might look at it and say, Roger, I see that as a 4. I might look at it and say, no, that's a 5. But in either case, you're at that sort of place where you probably need to reconstruct the road totally. And again, that means digging it all up and removing the pavement and regrading it. Yeah.
Are you resetting the castings, too?
Resetting the castings, additional costs associated with police details. It takes it's a longer process. All the way around, it's a more expensive endeavor.
Yeah, I just want to add, it's just not resetting castings, it's sometimes completely rebuilding the catch basins. When you look at a road, there's two main concerns of the road. Is a sub-base good? That means that you see a lot of alligator cracking in the road. If there's a lot of alligator cracking, that means there's something on the sub-base. It's getting wet and it's moving up and down, with especially with the frost. And then number 2, the second thing you want to look at is the water shedding the road? Is the profile, adequate to drain the road so the water's not sitting in the road? Those are 2.
Explain to the audience what the profile of the roadway means.
It's the shape of the road. Does it have a proper crown in it? Is it definitive low points where the water's getting to, so it's draining from a rainstorm? And the sub-base is whatever's under there. Sometimes we can remove it. Sometimes you got to keep it dry. A lot of times it's just making sure the water is shedding properly into the drainage system and draining out. We evaluate that every time we look at a road before we assess it a value and before we go into reconstruct it or repave it.
Okay, thank you.
So I talked about our presentation in April to the Board of Selectmen, and we plugged this back in. And the reason we put this in was just to say that, maybe your roads on this list before we heard from some of the residents, we had this list put together, but it was intended at that point just to make everyone aware of, we realize that some of these roads may require attention. We get it, we realize it. And we put that on the list. If you want to call it a wish list, if you want to call it, we're attentive to it. That's what the intention was behind putting this list together. And incidentally, at the bottom, temporary work proposed, there were some roads there that, and again, this is in Crow Point, that were so far gone that we did have to go there and do some isolated leveling. I went there with the town administrator. He looked at it. We were paving close by. We were paving Downer Ave. We had an opportunity to go up there. Remember, we talked about proximity, being able to move the machinery, so we had an opportunity to get up there and do a little bit of leveling, although the intent is to go in there next year and reconstruct these roads. So we didn't want to put a large investment into those roads, knowing that they were going to be reconstructed anyway.
So just on that point,
Sure.
when it says level and seal, is that the seal coat?
Yes.
Okay.
Microseal.
Right, no, I think they've done it in some streets near me. Are you saying that these roads that are listed here are roads that are scheduled to be done in the next couple of years?
The roads that are up, some of the roads that are listed in, some of the roads that are listed in the temporary work proposal, those are scheduled to happen next year.
So they're scheduled to get the seal coat next year?
No, reconstruction.
No.
That's what I'm asking. I'm sorry.
Yeah, reconstruction.
So they would be on the list for reconstruction next year?
Correct.
Yeah, the 4 roads on the bottom of
These roads here.
What about the roads above it?
those don't show up in any 5-year construction plan at this time.
Is there an outside time period where a road, no matter how well-traveled, if it's beyond the 10, is there a certain year where you say, boy, we got to get to this, it's 18 years now, or 15 years?
I can answer that. I mean, I was writing down some dates. I think you can see it on the next graph. I wrote down some dates. Some of the dates indicated the last time they were paved, and
Right.
some were, the last time they were sealed. And some of these roads, like, for example, Harbor Drive, 1972, that was when the road was accepted as a town way, that and Kimball Drive. So they haven't been done, nothing's been done to those since 1972.
1972?
1972, and I think there's one in the 60s. Yeah, in the 60s, yeah, U.S. Bates and Whitcomb Lane. However, let's be honest, those are dead-end roads, don't get a load of traffic, and they aren't in that bad a shape even at this current time. But you ask, is there a date? Everything's driven by funding. I mean, it's all. I mean, if you don't have any money, you can't expand your. I mean, you're fully aware of that.
No, I am, yeah.
Yeah. So, you can put years on it, you can put, all the rating system on it you want, if you can't go forward, because if we go over our budget, you'll be speaking to 2 other people sitting here, not us.
The reason why I'm asking is, people do call us and call the town, and whether it be Crow Point or South Hingham or wherever, and, sometimes you don't know what to tell them, because I see the roads, and they're not, some of the roads are not in great shape, whether it's a 4 or 5, I don't know, I'll look at the list. And so you always want to be helpful to people and say, geez, it's coming, and sometimes we don't know when it's coming. That's one of the problems.
Well, I think sometimes, I mean, we get those calls, as you might imagine, all the time. I mean, we get those calls frequently. I can tell you that 99.9% of the time, people understand this is what we're working with. So I would suggest, I put it out there, that if you guys feel like you're not comfortable answering those questions, call us. That's what we're here for. We would love, and we'll get back to you and say, this is how we address that. This is how. If they bring those concerns to you and they want to know specifically, the who's and the what's and the whys, and there's some, it's not clear. Let us know. We would prefer actually be able to give them the straight sort of scoop versus putting you guys in a position where you've got to sort of, I don't know, we got to, so we're here for you, I guess is what we're saying, if you need us to help you answer some of those
I'd
questions.
also point out that the 5-year plan, it is on the website, correct?
Yes, yeah.
And so I think, so sometimes we get, you might get a call, we might get a call from someone saying, I don't see my street on that list.
Right.
Kind of, where is it in the queue?
Right. Okay, so this is just the revised list. So one of the tasks we were asked to do is to go back, consider what we
Gentlemen.
present what we sort of update what we presented last year, and if you want to call this a wish list, if you want to call it other roads that should be considered, certainly we could have expanded on this, but this list itself represents almost $900,000 worth of additional work. This very, very quickly, this is just some of the, funding that we've expended already. We talked about the Chapter 90 funding, the $351,000. This fiscal year, this is what's left. And I'll talk about this in a minute. Chapter 90 from last year, we spent that all. The Winter Recovery Assistance Program, we spent that all. Town funding, this is what's available from the FY16 budget, so we've tapped that already. We have bills to pay, so we have a carryover into the spring of 2016 of $546,000. Now, let me explain that, if I may. A lot of the funding I just talked to you about, especially from at the state level, not only is it difficult to nail down what it's going to be from year to year, but we're assuming it's going to be somewhere between $550,000 and $750,000. But that funding, in addition to our local funding, sometimes doesn't become available till well into the construction season. So that means if we want to get started and we don't have any money, we have to wait till that funding becomes available. So starting the road work in July is not, it's a non-fact. A couple of things present themselves. One is every other community that's not considering that is calling the contractor and asking them to show up. And number two, it means that we're getting out on the roads and doing the work late in the season. The temperatures begin to change. The quality of the work is becomes suspect. So we always carry a certain amount of money into the subsequent year so that we're prepared to start work as soon as the weather's right. And then, of course, we try to get off the road as quickly as possible with respect to school operations. We don't want to be out there disrupting the school. So we just wrapped up, I mean, literally this week, some microsurfacing, and this is the balance that we currently have that we will carry forward that would represent $1 million to $1.3 million, depending on the funding, worth of work next year. Okay? And I won't belabor this because this will be available on the website, but we talked about Crow Point, the next location. Incidentally, if you see a shorter list here, you know, that's dependent on the length of the road. Are we talking reconstruction, the cost? If those things get larger, if the road is bigger or the cost is greater, we're doing less roads. 2017 is certainly fluid, meaning that, you know, we may see more roads added to that, depending on, again, on all those different aspects that we talked about, those different things that might come up. But don't look at the list, oh, geez, 16 is really long and 17 is really short. There's the other things that we talked about that bear upon that.
And just so that it's clear, these are public ways. These aren't private roadways at all.
No, sir. Yeah. Same thing, these are the following roads. So this other graph sort of represents what we talked about earlier in the presentation, maintenance versus reconstruct. It goes to Mr. Ginn's question, I think, a little bit. And so, excuse me, if you were to give us $1 million tomorrow, and you were to say, hey, Harry, Roger, go out there and what can you get done with that $1 million? Well, we're representing three different things. This dark blue line is a maintenance, basic maintenance, just a microsurfacing. An example of where we did that would be half of Cushing Street. Half of Cushing Street received this type of treatment. Maintenance type 2 would be this type of maintenance. Unincidentally, with that Cushing Street type of maintenance approach, maintenance 1, if you will, with $1 million, we could do roughly 16.3 miles. If we applied, I'm sorry?
How long is that good for? The treatment that you...
About 7 to 8 years, maybe. It's something that we don't do very much of it because you're putting you're sealing a road that's already, you know, deteriorated to a certain degree. You're just trying to extend the life of it, and it's a short-term thing, so it's not a great investment for the town. So we don't do that very often. The reason why that lower Cushing Street from Main Street towards it get done because we got it for a good price because they were trying an experimental fiber in the mix. So we gave them that road as a good candidate to try, and we got a good deal on it. Other than that, we generally want to go to the second level maintenance, the lighter blue.
Do the plow blades take any of that off in the winter season?
At times it could shave a little bit here and there, but it's not, you know, especially if you put it on fresh pavement. If you put it on a binder course of pavement, which we do, it really absorbs it, you know, quite well, and it's very difficult to get, you know, come off. I mean, we've had great successes with it. I just don't want to belabor the point here, but if you want to take a look at the difference between hot mix asphalt and the micro seal, as you get on to Beale Street, and from North Street to Faulkner Road, we reclaimed it, we binded it with 3 inches of binder, and we put a micro surface on it. From Faulkner Road to Wayne B. Terry Drive, we reclaimed the sub-base, we put 3 inches of binder down, and we put regular hot mix asphalt, 1.5 inches thick.
Finish course.
Finish course. They've both been down for 6 years. The microsurface looked like we did it yesterday, and the hot mix asphalt is starting to fail. There's many reasons for that. They've changed the weight of the oil. It's a thinner weight. They've been putting motor oil in the mix, but we have to abide by Mass DOT specifications for Chapter 90 to pay for our mix. So we're obliged to, you know, follow their rules and regulations. And whether it's a 50-year, you know, specification by the planning board, using the same asphalt that we are, as long as it meets state spec, and these deficiencies in this mix is a problem. I could give you several other examples around town where the hot mix asphalt is starting to fail.
Thank you.
Interesting.
You bet. And so the last bar, if you will, here represents 3.17 miles or 3.2 miles of what we could get with the $1 million if we did the full depth reconstruct that we talked about. 3 inches of binder with a microsurfacing.
Is that more likely to occur on the roads that are on hills in the towns?
It is what more?
The full depth reconstruction?
No, I don't think that,
Doesn't make a difference?
Doesn't have a bearing, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that the failure type scenario where you've got
Correct.
the worst case scenario, and
Correct.
obviously it costs more money to do that, you get less done, what you're saying?
In most cases, it's probably in the older end of town, and the roads were constructed, a couple hundred years ago for a wagon, and they just evolved with pavement on them, and a lot of cases like that. Union Street, perfect example.
And this, again, I think speaks to the strategy we've been employing, which is right here on this chart, that of deploying dollars to roads before they get to that failure point, because it becomes so cost prohibitive to reclaim them.
Right, and I think exactly, and so what we're trying to signify here is that, excuse me, guys, is that exactly where we have, fair to poor roads. We're trying to prevent those roads from ending up here. So that's represented in the history of the tracking since 2009. We can measure that. We know what that represents. We know how many roads we reclaim. That represents 66% of the roads we've done, or 19, almost 20 miles of road. The other 30% represents, the roads that are failing or worse roads, the types of roads that require reclaiming. This one is just a combination where we've done a little bit of both, maybe half the road one way and the other half the other way. And the quarter of mile represents a new road, a 100% new road, non-existing road, Bear Cove Park Drive being an example. That represents 1% of what we've done over the last, since 2009, over the last 6 years.
So Roger, what we're saying roughly is that the failing roads on a yearly basis, we're putting about 30% of our resources into that.
Precisely.
And is that working? I did see the chart that seems like the failure roads are decreasing. There only seem to be a few of them.
Yeah.
I'm not sure which ones they are yet, but we'll figure that out at some point.
I think, and actually Harry and I were talking about this just today. This year, for example, Crow Point's one location where we've got a lot of 4s and 5s. And into next year, we're sort of coming through the tunnel with respect to the worst roads. We're beginning to see that we've got a lot of, even at just, the 30%, we've done 9 miles of failing roads. So when we say we do maintenance first, I don't want people to walk away thinking, what does that mean? You don't fix a road if it's destroyed? No, we do those roads. But there's so many of those, right? And so what we're doing is we're beginning to see that there's less and less of those 4s and 5s, and over the course of the next 2 years, we expect that number to sort of continue to decrease.
So just to correlate that to the chart we had earlier, is where the numbers were like 6 and 4 and 2, we have more than 2 roads that are total failures, right?
Yeah, and that doesn't represent 2 roads, it represents miles.
Right, no, but the earlier chart...
I'm sorry, not even miles, I'm sorry, Paul, percentage.
Right.
Yeah.
But the earlier chart that we're looking at, the numbers were small, they were going down for the failure.
Correct.
That doesn't reflect the actual roads that are failure. Right, because you had like a 6, a 4, and 2 or something.
Those are percentages.
Oh, percentages.
Percent of the total.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so this turned out to be a really great photo, sort of visually represent, and it's all, when you see a picture, obviously, we have to be careful because it requires context, but this is Gardner Street. Upper Gardner Street to be exact. Upper Gardner Street, I think we all know, during the commuting hours, it's a pretty busy road. Whether it should be or not, that's a different discussion, but it's a pretty busy road. And this line represents the town of Hingham, this way. This line represents Rockland, going the other way. Rockland's or Norwell, I don't even know. But this is where we ended. But I can rest assured that the cracks and the failures didn't stop at the town line. We haven't figured out a way to make that work yet. The cracks do continue into the town of Hingham. So you have to ask yourself this question: how, just looking at this, how close are we to having a road that's completely gone south? I would submit that it's pretty close. This did not require full depth reconstruction. The costs associated with doing a road like this, the detours, the impacts on the residents, where do we send this high volume traffic during construction? It's something that we need to consider, right? And we need to catch this before it begins to go completely south. And it was pretty close. And again, the intent here is to show you where we could be if we don't act in a way that considers maintenance in addition to reconstruction. This is just a typical slide that I put in. Again, it'll be on the town website. It tells you how we, as the engineering department, will notify you when there's construction scheduled. We place the information on the town website. We communicate via email to priority personnel, the school department, the fire department. So if you've got a kid that's going to school and he's catching a bus, and a son or daughter is going to school, is catching you're worried about that transportation, we communicate to the transportation department. We go so far as to physically hand out notices. We try to do that. There's a posting in the newspaper. And we use social media, Twitter and Facebook. And we try very hard to let everybody know where we're going to be and when we're going to start work. Obviously, we're dealing with the type of work that is weather dependent. So we'd love to tell you for sure that it's not going to rain next week or tomorrow, but we don't know that always. And in that case, there needs to be a change in the schedule. But we do our best to sort of notify you where we are. And at the end, I think that represents the presentation.
Thank you very much. That was very informative.
Just a quick question, last thing. Thank you very much, gentlemen. It was actually very informative.
Thank you.
And again, sometimes I'll miss it. Is there something on this list that shows me the particular roads that are failing or worse roads by name?
I don't believe so. I do want to add something that wasn't added in the presentation. Number one is Upper Gardner Street was not on the 5-year plan. We paved it this last year. Yeah. That road had to jump up because of the condition. Although this spring, due to a lousy winter, we had to accelerate that, and that was. We've done, I think, 31 roads over the last 6 years. I think that was a number, I may be mistaken, but it's close to that weren't on the 5-year plan. So I think there's some residents here that have a road that is on the 5-year plan. When I get a call from a resident saying, gee, my road, it should be paved, and it's not on the 5-year plan, I say, well, if we do due diligence, I mean, we do estimate these roads on a conservative nature because the oil price is very volatile. All the bids don't come in at the same time. We have to rebid certain services every couple of years, so we don't know where they stand according to bids. So if we do our due diligence and we come in with lower than our budget, we have extra money and we put it right back on the roads. Liberty Pole, for example, we've done, I think, 6 roads up there over the last 2 years that weren't in the road construction schedule. And I explain the whole process to these people, the people that do call, and 99% of the time, they understand my explanation. And they say, well, I hope you have some money left over this year to consider my road when the time comes. And it's worked about 30 times over the last 6 years that we've been able to get in someone's road and pave it they didn't expect.
Which is great.
So, I mean, it is a fluid situation all the time. The road construction schedule, sometimes we have to move roads up. Sometimes roads get deferred because of certain utility issues. We can't get in there when they're on the 5-year plan. There's some roads in World's End right now that have been deferred because of utility issues. So, I mean, those things do all come into play when we're formulating our yearly construction schedule.
Thank you.
And Harry, just to follow up on that, when those things happen, I would just go back to the first slide in Roger's presentation. That's where the decision tree comes into play.
That's correct.
So that when you get those phone calls, you have a process so that all of the many requests that you get are evaluated against sort of the same criteria, so that again, you're using that process all the way through.
I don't want to jump around, but I do want to mention one thing. Mr. Gannon asked me about the seal, and I mentioned Cushion Street was an experimental road. We put the roads up in your neighborhood that are all popping up that seal, they will put down on existing pavement. That's why it didn't last, and that's why we don't go to that
straight seal system. We're afraid of that, type of issue coming up, but that's the condition of some of those roads up in that neighborhood.
Yeah, I know they're
that
tough.
was sealed before it was paved.
I'm no engineer, so I don't know what the reason.
That's what happened to those roads.
I hear
up there.
about it, that's all.
That's why we're not a big fan of that type of treatment.
Thank you.
We're way over schedule here, but I know there's people that have come perhaps to weigh in on this subject. If you'd like to make a point or a comment or complaint, you're welcome to do so. I just ask you to be respectful of the time because we're running way behind. And having said that, is there anybody that would like to speak? All right, well, you know what, Roger and Harry, thank you so much. I know this is a long explanation, I know you've given it before. I always enjoy hearing it, frankly. I find it very informative, and I think the public benefits from being educated as to how we spend the money on these streets, so thanks very much. And the micro sealing is done for the season, right?
Everything's,
Okay,
unless
good,
someone
great,
unexpected comes up.
perfect timing. All right, well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
All right. All right.
There might be some people in the hall.
Okay. Want to take a little break before we start this? Or you just want to go?
No, we should, just might want to let people know in the hallway.
We can take up the vehicle parking.
Yeah.
We're going to take up the vehicle parking. Here. We have some of those loads here.
Do you want to speak, Paul?
Yeah. I asked. Nobody raised their hand.
Can we get a chance to speak?
I just...
I don't think he heard you. I'm just telling him.
Go back.
Do you want me to get Harry?
Hold on one second. One second. See if I can. Just stand up and ask if we can be recognized.
All right. Okay, we just want to return briefly to the earlier subject relative to the roads. Mr. Blucke, did you want to say something?
Here's the first one I would like to follow.
All right.
Thank you.
Would you like to speak into the
To the
microphone, please?
microphone, please.
I'd rather sit, but that's okay.
Sure, you can sit. We'd love to have your company. Come on.
Thank you.
Want to grab that chair right there, Harry? You mind if I sit with you?
Pardon?
I want to sit with you, is that okay?
Oh, good.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm Lucinda Day. I live at 88 Whitcomb Avenue, and I've been there for close to 50 years. We want to thank, first of all, the DPW for coming and helping us fix our potholes over the last 5+ years. Every time we call them, they seem to come and repave the potholes. We called them in early fall of last year in preparation for the winter to come. They came and filled the potholes. It was a bad winter, and all the potholes opened up. They came again in April, filled the potholes, they opened up again. They came in June, and they came in July. And we took pictures in August. The potholes not only are there, but there are bigger potholes and more potholes. We live in a neighborhood with 50 children. There are no sidewalks. We have estimated 1,000 cars a day go up and down our street. There's only one access, and that's onto High Street. We have had problems driving those streets with not only the children, but the parked cars, construction for the neighbors, the terrible blind curve between Roanoke Lane and Whitcomb Lane, particularly in the winter when there are potholes, trying to dodge the cars coming around that double curve, the children and the potholes. It's very dangerous and very difficult to drive. Then you come down to the corner of Howland Lane and 82 Whitcomb Avenue. Those potholes have been filled and filled and filled for over 5 years. They keep opening up. There needs to be a major problem underneath. And then we come down to Howland Lane. They filled a few of those potholes on Howland Lane, but there's some there that are four paving layers deep and 2 feet wide. They have not been filled, I assume, because they're too deep to fill. The pothole filling won't hold. We need to have a problem solved. Children have had accidents on those potholes. One of them has been taken to South Shore Hospital for evaluation. I understood at one point there was the idea of repaving certain sections of the road, and there are sections of Whitcomb Avenue and Howland Lane that don't need work, but there are a couple of sections that are disaster. 7 Howland Lane to Gristmill Lane, you cannot believe it. I have pictures here. I don't want to bore you. I'm sure that you have been down those streets many times. We see that those streets are on the pending list. What does that mean? It isn't even on the 5-year plan. We need to have something done on the short term. So I want to remind you that Whitcomb Avenue, Howland Lane residents were the ones that started this discussion about the town-wide problem. And we had hoped that there was going to be a new system of evaluating the roads that need repair today, not 5 years down the line. And that's Whitcomb Avenue. So that's what I have to say, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Can I say one thing? If nobody else does?
Well, you know what? You've spoken a number of times, and Mr. Blucke wants to talk, so why don't you just go up there and...
I've been sitting too long. I want to thank you, Ted, for calling me and letting me know that you were going to be here tonight. Otherwise, I might not have been here, but
Could you give your address, Mr. Blucke?
I'm sorry?
Would you give your address for the record,
I'm
please?
sorry. I live at 21 Howland Lane, and I've been there 32 years, almost as long as it's been since that road has been paved. And I looked at your 15-year chart, and my road hasn't been paved for over twice that long, and yet it's perfectly good. It's fine down by my place. The trouble is, as I explained last month, we got a segment. It's a 1/10 of a mile, and you can't get up the road without going through 26 potholes in front of one house. And you put the stuff in to fix it all the time. It lasts a while, and then you're back. And it just goes on, and we don't seem to get ahead of it. And that's why I wanted to comment here, because I looked for a policy on the roads, and I went through the website, thanks to Ted telling me about the meeting, and I couldn't find one. And then I said, well, maybe it's one of those 40 committees. There's a committee for everything in Hingham, but I didn't find one for roads. So where is the technical expertise that might be a check on what the department that is doing the work is saying? And I'm not doubting what they say. I'm only saying I don't have that expertise, but it needs to be available as a checkpoint with what we're hearing from Roger. And I don't mean that as an adversarial way. I think that's the way the system really ought to work. And since I couldn't find what I thought were the policies that should be here in Hingham on roads, I wrote some items down before I got here and before I saw your screen. And mine are different than yours, interesting enough. And mine are much more people-oriented. And I'll just tell you the ones that I wrote down. And I said, the highest priority ought to be fixing these really terrible roads in town, because we're not going to get to the bottom of the problem by fixing the good roads without specific budget money allocated to catch up with the problem, because it's always going to be there if we continue just to fix the roads that are already in good shape. And you've driven over Tower Road, you've driven Bucket Mill, they're perfectly fine. And I don't doubt that chart I saw there, but by the same token, I've been on my road 32 years, and that chart talked about a decrease in 15. And I'm saying somewhere there ought to be a compromise that there is money around to take care of fixing all the old bad roads that are not getting fixed because we're spending the money on trying to fix roads that are already in pretty good shape. And I'll remind you again what I said last time. We're fixing all of the roads and repaving all of World's End. And that's a low population area. It's not a lot of children there, as opposed to the neighborhood that I live in. It seems like we need a more people-oriented policy here that looks at school kids and where they live and how the roads are being taken care of where those kids are. Where are there public safety problems in town and how the roads affect those things? To me, those are the core of what a policy really ought to be, and they're just as important as some of the technical things that I saw here tonight. I did look at this, making the charts of the 1 to 5 that we rate the roads, and I understand why you do it that way, but then I look at the graph and I see where all the money's going. There's nothing left over to get anything done with the bad roads there. We're never going to get ahead of this problem, as it seems to me. And I would just conclude by saying, I don't really think we're on an uptrend, as I heard. I think we're on a downtrend, and we need a specific budget that's going to address the bad roads in town that are not getting work now because we're dedicating the money to the ones that are already good shape, the class 1 and class 2. So I'm saying that piece of the policy needs to be really thoroughly examined to see that it really holds water. That's the basis of where the money's being spent. And I'm saying, is that correct? Because I'm saying it doesn't look to me like this problem is going to go away. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Just a quick comment on that. And
I'm sorry, Paul.
Just a quick comment. One of the reasons why I'm trying to get that list so I can look at the failure roads is I'm trying to measure how we're doing, because I'm concerned about the safety issues, not only for the elderly and the kids. And I know the town is doing the best they can, but there may be another way to look at it, and I'm open to that.
I mean, we got 2 kids already gotten hurt. One in the hospital, caught in potholes on that street, and nothing's being done to solve that problem in the next 5 years. That doesn't make sense. Thank you.
Are you saying bingo, or do you want to make a point?
I want to make a...
Okay. I just appreciate if you could move it along. We had a lot of people waiting to... He doesn't know.
With all due respect to Mr. Belucchi, and
Identify yourself by name.
Jim Clark, 79 Tower Road.
Thank you.
With all due respect, all his points were very well taken. Back to the issue of Tower Road and Gristmill Lane, I can speak to those. Gristmill Lane was paved in 1972 or 3, and they had some problems there. It wasn't completed. I don't know who inspected it or checked it or whatever, but it clearly wasn't done right. Tower Road was paved in 1960. They were there in 1987 and paved the straight section and didn't do the circle, little traffic, so they didn't do it, right? That was 30 whatever years ago. And the drainage is not fixed, as we all know. We're talking about that now, which I've asked for the letter from town council stating the reason the town is...
We're wandering far afield here, Mr. Clark.
It's part of the road. You're going to
Respect.
reconstruct the roads. I want the drainage fixed before you reconstruct the road. There's no sense not doing the drainage before you do the road.
This is off the agenda, Mr. Clark.
All I ask for is the paperwork that says you can put your water on my property, that's all. And I haven't got it yet, and I've been asking since 1983, when they provided the land so they could accept Grist Mill Lane.
Thank you.
Really off topic.
Thank you.
Will I be able to expect an answer?
We're not getting into that at this level, at this point, at this time. We have a room full of people wanting to
Well, I'm
talk
sorry about that,
another-
but this has been going on
Thank you.
37 years.
Mr. Clark,
Thank
we have
you.
answered your question many times, and there are a number of people who have been waiting here for over an hour for their scheduled hearing. You were brought to the table to speak to the issue of the roads, not to something else. So
I'm
you've
not
made your
off the
comments.
roads yet.
Thank you very much.
They're part of the roads.
Thank you, Mr. Clark.
And we've been vetted for that part of the roads, and we haven't got what we paid for, is my point. We paid for the road. The town didn't pay for that section of the road.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
What's that?
Thank you, gentlemen,
very
once
much.
again. Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for keeping you. We were talking about a very important issue, as you could see. The roadways that we travel on are an interest to all of us. But now, we're going to get to another matter, and that is the Bear Cove Park proposed regulations. And as you will recall, we met last time, and we heard from Mr. Matthews. Is Mr. Matthews in the audience by chance? I
don't believe so.
Mr. Matthews in the audience. Okay. Well, the Bear Cove Park Committee had a series of meetings with respect to revising the regulations that are currently in place. And there was a discussion and a recommendation made by the committee for some additional revised regulations. And we've taken that under advisement. And we've also requested additional input. And we've received quite a bit of input. In fact, each of us has received
Your emails and letters.
more correspondence on this issue of dogs than any other issue that I've encountered, which is good. You know, I like the interest. You know, at this juncture, I'm not sure whether the board is going to vote to adopt regulations or whether there's an interim step. For the record, though, I do want to thank the Bear Cove Park Committee because this is frankly a thankless task that they undertook. The emotions that are generated with people and their pets, no matter where you are on the issue, is strong, and it's actually palpable. It's something that I'm sure that each of us has encountered in conversations with people in the community, through emails, calls, letters. There's been no limit to the views that have been expressed, and it's interesting because I found it helpful, and I didn't say, oh, this view's from out of town, that doesn't count. I didn't do any of that. I looked at everything straight on, and you know, saw some of the issues that seemed to come out in terms of a pattern or a consensus amongst the writers. So, you know, at this point, I think that perhaps we can have a little chat amongst ourselves, open it up to the public. When you talk, I don't like using the gavel. I've only used it a couple times, but I will use it if we start going into personalities. No personal attacks, please. You can have strongly held views. We adopted a code of conduct last time we were in. We want to be respectful of each other's views, even if we disagree with them, even if we think that they're absolutely ridiculous. Everybody's got a right to have their own views. So The park is a resource of the community. It's one that we share with other communities. I think that the success of the park is in part attributable to what we're now experiencing and contemplating. I really would like to thank and express my appreciation to the Bear Cove Park Committee for the good work they've done. I see Mr. McMillan here too. I extend that to him. I know that there's a lot of work that this board never sees but enjoys the results of when we're looking at this. So I'm kind of setting that as the stage. If you want to talk, you raise your hand. If what you're saying is something that the four people ahead of you have said, you can certainly say it, but I think saying it repeatedly loses its effect over time. So I'll ask my colleagues if anything they want to add. We have a leash law in town. We have a bylaw. We all understand statutorily that an owner or a keeper of a dog is liable and responsible for the injuries that that dog causes, regardless of fault. It's strict liability. So we're operating on a couple of, basic ground rules. We're aware of what the Wampatuck State Park rules are. Frankly, as I started reading more of this, questions arose in my mind. So at this point, rather than just keep going on, I share with my colleagues. You'd like to add?
Well, I do want to hear what everybody has to say, but I want to thank the committee as well, both minority and majority. But I think, I think Paul said it, but it was very helpful to me, I will tell you, to hear from so many people. It doesn't happen all the time, and sometimes I wish it happened a lot more than it does. But it was very helpful to me. I think when I was here the last meeting, if people don't remember, I made an initial comment because I didn't want to say too much. We were just kind of digesting the rules, and people hadn't had a chance to comment on them. And I said that I can't see myself voting for the rules, and especially that we're taking away the whole weekend off leash. I didn't think that was something I could ever support. Since that time, I heard from a lot of people, and things kind of kept resonating in my brain, and I tried to respond to some of the folks. I think that what we really need to do is take some interim steps now to look at the existing rules, to maybe enforce them, to make them work. I think there's some complaints that, maybe if we just enforce the rules we had and we assess this 6 months down the road, we might find we're in a better place. People did say that just the mere discussion of this topic was pushing people, and again, we're only talking about a small percentage or a minority that were actually, that what I'm reading and I'm hearing and I'm seeing, because I use, obviously I've been there myself, that may be a problem. And I think I brought up the issue of how do we do that? Well, we need to talk about it. Input from everybody. And I know that at the Bear Cove committee meeting, there were people that had proposals that, people were going to volunteer. But I will say this, and I may be the only one, I may not be, I have no idea, is I think if this is such an important asset of the town, we have to find some ways to funnel some more resources into that park. Because if everybody's using it and it's exponentially been used over time, we're only have, Scott can only do so much. The offices can only do so much. We need to find a way. You're all taxpayers. You all have a say in what happens. And I just think we should allocate some more money to that park so that we can enforce the rules and work together on some other proposals. I don't see it, the rules being voted on tonight by me. I won't support that. I want to be clear on that. I think we need to do a lot more work to find ways to work together to get this park in a shape that everybody feels comfortable in it.
So I want to start, my first volunteer job in the town was on the Bear Cove Park Committee, Ron may remember, and it is, when you think of the scope of the work that committee does, one of the reasons we're here tonight is because Bear Cove Park is a special place, and that has everything to do with the volunteers, the rangers, past and present, and Bear Cove Park is now a place that it's extremely popular for all those reasons, and I want to thank the committee not just for all the work they've done, but also, you know, when this issue came up, I remember that there was an incident. It involved a child, it involved a bite, and I also really want to compliment the Bear Cove Park Committee on the professionalism and the respectful way that they did it. I understand you had 150 people come to one of your meetings. You know, that's about how many people we get on night 2 of town meeting. And, you know, this is a big audience for us. So I think you've had some challenging circumstances, and I really, I admire and appreciate the way that, you know, the way that you've handled it. You know, like my colleagues, I'm a visitor to Bear Cove Park, was there before I had a dog, was there after I had a dog. I've read really carefully. It's about 100 letters. I've read, as my colleagues had, I've read every single one of them, and I appreciate everybody taking the time. Some people said, you know, I've never written a letter before, but I feel pretty strongly about this, so I'm going to write. Thank you, and we hope you continue to stay engaged. What was interesting for me is in reading the letters, it almost felt like people were describing 2 very different places. You know, you'd open up one email and it would say, I've been going to Bear Cove Park for years. I go in there 5 times a week. I've never had an issue. I've heard about some things, but I've never really seen anything. And then the next letter is somebody who says, every time I go in there, I'm accosted. I can't walk. It's difficult. I don't go there anymore. I don't like to go there, and it's difficult in reading, as Paul said, all these letters, and thinking this is kind of the same, you know, the same park. And, you know, as a result of that, I agree with Paul. I think we have a little bit more work to do before we should take any steps, and I think the work we have to do is in a couple of areas. One is gathering a little bit more hard data. I'm kind of an analytical person, and I think we have a lot of great anecdotal data, but a little bit more data, I think, will be sort of helpful. I think we need to spend a little bit more time, you know, in the public input process. I remember, and Glenn Olson reminded me, when we started talking about the noise bylaw 2 years ago, we had a committee and they had some meetings, and the first policy that came out, all of a sudden, there was a groundswell of people. And the committee said, you know what, we're going to take the time, we're going to go through these pieces, we're going to get the input, and I think as a result we ended up with a better quality product. I also think that we also have some work to do with respect to enforcement. My own opinion is, you know, we could have 20 Scott McMillans, and we could have 5 police officers there all day, and I think we're still going to get the same kind of letters we get. And that's just due to the size of Bear Cove Park. And so I want to make sure that we don't say to the Bear Cove Park Committee, you know, well, let's go figure out about this enforcement thing. I think there has to be a little bit more of a collective effort. As I'm thinking about this too, I'm conscious that we have what is right now a 7-person committee that has other responsibilities to the park. And I wonder whether this is something, given the level of townwide interest, given that we have a leash law in town, whether this is something that we need to sort of take the great work that the Bear Cove Committee has done and advance it with a different group, certainly relying on the Bear Cove Park Committee, but I feel like if we say to 7 people, go fix this, I don't think we're doing a disservice to you. That just doesn't feel right. So I'm at the place where I think it's too soon to vote on things. I think we perhaps could talk about how do we carry this forward. But I would also say one final thing, and that is that if we don't vote anything tonight, my expectation would be that we got to follow the rules in Bear Cove Park. And I think I'm probably preaching to the choir here, right? You're the folks that pick up after your dogs are on voice control. I think some of you have tried to take steps to mobilize and inform, and I think that's terrific. But I would also say that whatever happens in the time period before we vote on any regulations, whether that's us or a bigger body, what happens in that park is going to be visible, and I think it's going to inform all of our decisions. So I would ask that as we kind of carry this forward, that we also, and this is a place where where we need your help, is a little bit better compliance with the rules that are there. Last time, I think what folks said is, with greater visibility on this topic, there's been some better behavior. We just want to kind of keep that going. So I'm with Paul. I'm not really, I think we're too soon to vote.
Yeah, I do too. Although I don't know how many of you are here because you support no leash with dogs, but my focus, quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, is on the public safety of the people in there, especially the very young and the older people, because that thematically was what I was seeing in these communications to us. And I'm sensitive to the fact that if an older person gets knocked down, the consequences of an injury to an older person can be life-altering in a way that, that's not how you want to go out with a broken hip. And I think that we can figure out something that works, but in my mind, the safety of the public is got to be paramount here. I know there's some passionate letters about dogs, and I respect that. I'm not anti-dog. I had a dog myself. But the point is that this is a park for everybody. Speaking today with Representative Murphy's assistant, and there's an initiative that's being discussed and contemplated and linking the different parks, which I find very interesting, which I intend to follow up. I don't even know how the Great Esker Park works. I know it's across from the Bear Cove Park, but if there's going to be an interplay and an interconnectivity in the future, we've got to look big, and we've got to look over the horizon. I've heard different proposals. I'm reluctant to comment on them tonight. I'd like to refer this matter to our chief law enforcement officer to get a boots on the ground assessment. Sorry to give you more work, Glenn, but I think that's appropriate under the circumstances. I think there was some genuine unhappiness with some of the data, and quite frankly, if a person gets knocked down or injured, in the course of being in the park, are they likely to report it? I don't know. I think it's fair that most people don't, but I think we have to figure that out so we just get a real sense as to the population that's going in there, using it, how it's being used, where the most use is. It's a planning activity. It can be done. We have time. I think the people in this room, their awareness has been heightened. You can communicate that to other people in there. These are all questions I think that we can kind of work through in the coming months. It's going into the winter season. I don't know if it's going to be as busy, but it gives us the time. So that's kind of where I'm heading. Comments, questions from the audience?
John Hersey, I was very upset the last meeting I was here. I'm going to tell you folks, I'm going to speak to you folks that something they're not telling you. There's three people, there's three entities that are involved with Bear Cove Park. One of them is the Board of Selectmen, the Bear Cove Park Committee, and the National,
National Park Service.
National Park Service, okay? The National Park Service really has a top jurisdiction over the park, and it broke my heart to hear an individual say, I come to Hingham and I spend money here, and I want to have the permission to talk. I asked the permission from the...
We talked about this. Yeah. We're not getting into personalities.
No, but I feel bad that they have to ask. Okay, because Bear Cove Park is for everybody in the United States They don't have to ask permission.
We made that clear at the outset of this discussion,
I didn't
Mr.
hear
Hersey.
that. Okay. I want to make it clear that nobody has to ask to go in there, number one. Anybody can go in there from the United States.
We made that crystal clear. Thank you very much.
So I got one more thing. I also made a recommendation that maybe we ought to have an area down there that's fenced in. And one of the committee members is here, Shirley Rydell. She made the same recommendation. I don't see anything happening on that.
Thank you very much for your comment.
Well, and I think, again, there have been a lot of different and great recommendations that have been put forward. Lots of different ones, and I'm not sure we're really ready and in a place to talk about those tonight. But I do think that we need to take a little bit of time to look at all those different options and then look at the totality of the regulations. So, and Paul's making a good point about the other parks. So I think these are all suggestions that need a little bit more time, discussion, and input from the public. I would also like to make sure that in this process, we give more members of the public time. We got a couple of letters today at 5 o'clock or later, and I think there were people who thought we were going to vote tonight and that they were going to miss the opportunity for their voice to be heard. You've let us know this is an important enough issue that we have to make sure we have a mechanism and enough time so that all the voices are heard. I think that's important as well.
Okay, here's how we're going to do this. Everybody's going to get a chance to talk, but nobody's going to talk twice before everybody talks once. Clear? We're going to start from this side and work over.
Hi there. My name is Gia Rams. I live at 17 Franklin Rogers Road. Thank you for your continued entertainment of this issue. I feel strongly about having the opportunity to use the park with dogs under control. I feel strongly that people who love to run their dogs off leash maintain that right. I think we can come to a compromise. What I'd like to understand is when there are incidents of dogs not behaving, are we being recommended that we call the police? Might I suggest that there be an email or form on the website that allows for that type of submission? I don't know if it's necessary to call the police, although I did speak with a fellow runner recently who did encounter an aggressive dog in the park and did call the police, and she reports that the responding officer told her that this is a dog park. That was the responding officer's comment to her, and so what did she expect? So I would ask that perhaps the chief of police work to continue to educate his staff and officers about the nature of the park and the issues at hand.
That's an excellent point. This is going to be an educational effort on the part of everyone, both the reporter and the recipient of reports as to how to process this.
And I would go further, and the Bear Cove Park Committee has these great boards that are in place in the park. And again, as we're working through this, I think it would be a good idea to just put something up there, and we will take this as a to-do of, if you have an incident in the park, here's where you should report it. I think, again, that will help us get some data, to be aware of things.
I would prefer that our police, unless there's an incident of a dog bite or extraordinarily aggressive situation, that our police are patrolling other things. But my final point is that I think the call for additional enforcement of the existing regulations is a red herring. It's a distraction. There is no way, as Ms. Powers mentioned, that we can enforce a pick up your dog waste law and a jumping dog law. There's just not enough patrol people to do that, and self-enforcement hasn't worked. And I will report that I've had with folks who are in the audience and have stood up at these meetings and said that, there are just a couple of people who aren't following the rules. I've personally witnessed those people not following the rules and asked them, hey, your dog's way out of your sight and crossing in front of me and my dog, or you're parked illegally. I've had those conversations, and that behavior has not changed. So I think it's a red herring. I totally respect the passions that people have to be able to run their dogs off leash. I just don't think it's necessary to do it 7 days a week. And I'm sorry, my actual final point is, In this discussion, we have seemed to have forgotten what Bear Cove Park Committee member Susan has been calling to action in each of the Bear Cove Park Committee meetings, is that there is sensitive wildlife area. And this isn't just a dog issue and the convenience and passions of animal owners. This is also something that has to do with the sensitive environmental and ecosystem that's in place there. And I hope that we can have equal attention to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am? Please come up and identify yourself by name and address.
I'm Julie Kimball. I live at 12 Water Street. Because information is needed, and because people have lots of passions on both sides, it seems to me that focus groups, whether it's done through the park committee or however we go to do it, citizen focus groups comprised of representatives of each of the various concerns come together with ideas to work together to see how, as citizens, what kind of things we could come up with. Not people all of the same viewpoint, because you're not going to get anything new. But we have real legitimate concerns. Everybody does.
Yes.
And we all love the park, we all want it. But if we're going to be citizens trying to help in this process, to provide you with information, to assist the park committee, we need to be talking in some organized kind of a way. If a referee is needed or a moderator, that would be helpful, just to help us stick to the point and make it an idea kind kind
Thank you.
Maybe I'm idealistic, but I think those kinds of things work in
that's a
many
good
places.
point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Robert Kimball, the other half of 12 Water Street. Mine went blank. It seems to me we have a good set of regulations already in place for the park. They're, to some degree, not being followed. We have people that come from outside of Hingham to use our park, and what we do here doesn't provide education or information to them. So I think we have to think beyond our community to all of the users of the park, and if there's some way we can provide at least informational information to those other users. Maybe enforcement is a red herring, but there's no point in putting regulations in place, the ones we have, or even new regulations, if there's no means of enforcement. So, what are you going to do? I think we should look at what we have, how we might enforce what we have, how we might provide information and education to users of the park while we study where to go long term. Thank you.
Sir.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So Bradford, 15 Colby Road. Thank you for your attention. Agreeing with this gentleman and just adding that I do believe we have excellent rules in place, and if fines were posted, I do believe that people pay attention to money. And if you see that there is a $100 fine or a $75 fine for their dog waste or your I didn't think monetarily it was. I think it.
Okay, you know what, let
Thank you.
each of us get to talk, and
I am a frequent user. I see the sign, the signs, but I have not seen it large.
more conspicuous posting.
I believe I think that would put people in their tracks a bit, because I do believe that the rules that are currently available are excellent ones. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, ma'am. And then you.
So my name's Trish Cairns. I live at 240 Central Street, right here. I'm a veterinarian. I work at Norwell Vet Hospital for the past 17 years. And so I came from a slightly different perspective. But my thing, I've been mainly talking to clients in the past month about this case, and I think almost all of them really are very unaware of what's going on. So they know the signs are there, but they either don't read the Hingham paper, they don't go on the Bear Cove Committee site, they kind of are just unaware that there's really any changes going on. So my big thing is I really think we need to put some signage about even like the last month's meeting, what their suggestions were, the minority opinion, the majority opinion. I feel that should be posted at the park.
We need to educate the users.
Yeah, there's a letter from Jerry Elson from January, like all yellowed and crinkled up, like there's nothing recent up there. So I really think that needs to be out there so that Just people are just kind of more aware of what's going on. Because I think 201, I mean, obviously the clients I'm seeing are all dog walkers, but I mean, they wax poetically for 20 minutes about how wonderful Bear Cove is and how wonderful you are that run, just go on and on.
We saw that in the letters.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's definitely amazing. They also have Leslie Badger, who's a dog officer, who's terrific, and she does do a great job. I don't think she hands out any tickets for enforcement. She's, when she goes in there, most of the time she's looking for lost dogs. And then they also, I heard recently that she's going to get pulled and possibly go to Hull, so then there'll be less. So she'd be doing Hingham and Hull, which I don't know.
I can just correct that right off the bat. That's not. I think it was 2 years ago we shared her with Hull temporarily for one summer to see if it would work.
Yeah.
Their needs and ours were different. It didn't work out. So.
But I would say that Leslie works 35 hours a week.
She works.
So
and
if you think about all of her she's so terrific. All her responsibilities.
Yeah.
If she's more deployed in the park, that means maybe something else isn't happening. So, again, part of the ongoing discussion is how do we best leverage and use the resources that we have?
Exactly, because I think they have fines, we have good rules there, but I've never seen any enforcement of, anything going on, so, and I'm definitely really comfortable walking up to people and telling them how to make their dog behave, but, I'm not going to hand
You're a
them ticket.
veterinarian, so that's easy.
Anyway, that's it. Okay.
Well, thank you very much for your comments. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Matt Corcoran, 153 Denellen Circle, North Weymouth, a stone's throw over that bridge.
We heard.
And I just wanted to make the point that, tonight, speaking most of the people in the audience, that had they made a vote tonight that was very restrictive against, for 4 leashes at Bear Cove Park, we'd all be wondering what we could have done. The people, and I'd say the vast majority of people here are against this very restrictive leash law. And I'd like to say that I know this whole Green Hat Brigade we've talked about is just a bunch of volunteers, which is kind of like what America's built on, and that if we really use our, just be nice out there and tell people to follow the rules. In fact, if you see somebody breaking the rules, I don't have any problem sending an email to that email address, telling them what kind of dog it was, what the person looked like. I mean, maybe we can, I'm sure if enough people talk to them, these people will change their ways. We only have like they were saying, we might have 6 months, maybe hopefully longer, but if we have 6 months, let's make this work. We can make it work, and we'd all wonder tonight if they passed those regulations, what we could have done. So now we have the chance, and they're giving us the chance. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think your point is well taken, regardless of the opinion that you have right now in this room, as to where this should go.
Moving in this. I heard you last week, but I'll hear you again.
Thank you. I won't repeat things I've already said. I just wanted to bring up one thing I did mention to Ted.
Please.
Oh, sorry. Mike Esmond, 150 Denellen Circle. Thank you again for listening to out-of-town opinions. But I did want to say one thing that did occur to me as part of your studying it is the relationship with the Department of Interior, I think is the federal U.S. oversight agency. I think that's been asserted by members of the committee, and it was probably true, and it may still remain true, that there's a lot of use restrictions on the committee, but it occurs to me that a lot of those rules are put in place back when Congress had money and did things. And perhaps it's a chance to go back and ask if there's a way to be more creative with revenue opportunities. A lot of people have asserted that if there were ways that they could help participate financially, membership, things like that, for reasonable amounts of money, people would be willing to do, to pay for something like that. And that might help support some of the challenges that inevitably come back to any funding, committee or the town on how to pay for things going forward. So I think it's at least answering some of those questions and seeing if there's federal changing of opinion about it.
So it's a federal parks to communities program, so we are not allowed to charge membership or admittance to anybody within that park. We do have a Friends of the Bear Cove Park group, And so if anybody wants to donate to the Friends of the Bear Cove Park group, I think the committee works with the group to provide some amenities and other issues in the park. So there is a mechanism to do that, but it's only through gifts. We will not be able to charge.
Okay, I mean, I just respectfully, has anyone ever asked them if that type of thing has been reconsidered or would be willing to be reconsidered?
You know, I haven't asked that question. There's some questions I don't usually ask because I'm, fairly certain of the answers, but I'd be happy to pose the question.
Well, that was just my question. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Ted, how do we, maybe if he wanted to contact that group?
There's the National Park Service.
Friends of the Bear Cove Park.
Oh, the Friends of the Bear Cove Park. I don't know if they have a website location, but if you contact...
Just send money to the committee. With all due respect, the members of the Friends of Bear Cove Park are the Bear Cove Park Committee, period. It's not a 501, yada, yada.
So actually, that means that the Bear Cove Park, the Friends cannot be actively involved in any solicitation because that would be a violation of state law. That's why they usually set up separate Friends groups. I wasn't aware of that. So you can freely donate to them. They can't ask you for any money.
Do you have something you'd like to say, sir?
Yeah, if I could briefly.
Absolutely. The mic is yours.
Bob Murray, 23 Isaac Sprague Drive. My neighbor Jean. I certainly feel for her. There should be nobody in Bear Cove Park that's accosted by a dog or feel that they shouldn't be in that park because of a dog's off leash. And I think there's a lot of portions that, it's all a matter of perspective. If you're a not dog person, a dog comes up to you and sniffs you, you're accosted. And gee, I know in your instance that they jump on you, and there are different variances. So in this polarized society, we're going to have dog lovers saying, "Oh, there was nothing," and people who are not dog lovers saying, "Oh, I was attacked." So there's a view of what actually occurred. I've used the park. I've been in Bear Cove in Conservatory Park for about 20 years now. So I've used it. We're here tonight because it is a gem. And it's developed over the past 20 years, I think beyond anybody's wildest imagination from 20 years ago. Removing of the bunkers and removal of the toxic waste. It really is a gem. And denying, I'd hate to see a full leash law and deny, potentially Hingham dog walkers from being able to go back and enjoy it as much as they can. But again, I think there needs to be some accommodation needed to both dog walkers and joggers and bicyclists. But I also think there needs to be communication between both sets of groups. Walking a dog off leash, best dog in the world. If a biker is coming by you, a runner from behind, you have no real warning as to really bring that dog under control. So common rules of the road would be, hey, on your right, coming up, give me a chance. If you're seeing a runner coming, put that dog under control and make sure that he's at your side until the runner passes or the bike rider. I think, just not posting dog regulations, but posting bike regulations could also be a help.
Sure.
Thank you.
It's just not the dog owners. I walk my dogs up through the Conservatory to get into the park. Lots of cars park up there. I've seen runners get out of their car to go into the Bear Cove to run, but they'll be blamed on dog walkers that they're using that entrance behind the conservatory, up the music conservatory. Parking illegally, they'll say that there are dog walkers, but they're actually runners also using a quick way to get in. So I just think that there's a lot of blame being put on dog owners that isn't justified. But I also think there's a lot of responsibilities that if the dog owners want to keep their dogs off leash, that they also have to take responsibility for.
Thank you.
One last comment.
Sure.
If we're going to go with an off-leash policy or an on-leash policy in Bear Cove, I know Weymouth has Stoddard Park as an off-leash. Would the Selectmen, or would we be something that the Selectmen or Town of Hingham be willing to look at one of the other facilities in Hingham, that we would be able to have an off-leash facility within Hingham for the town residents?
We haven't made any decisions, so that would be premature to comment.
No, I said that. Stoddard Nexus in Weymouth, and they supply their residents with an off-leash facility. Oh, is it in Hingham?
On this side of the bridge. It's not a dog park.
Okay. Start to think.
I think everything's on the table.
All right, you know what? Can I just ask you to, thank you for
Thank
your
you very
very
much.
thoughtful comments. I
Thank you.
appreciate that. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I'm a companion for a man in Hingham who's 95 years old, and I took him for a walk in the
Do you
park.
have a name and an address?
My name is Marsha Bolke. I live in Quincy, and I take care of a man from Hingham from Main Street.
Okay.
And I took him into the park for about 1 hour, and about 10 dogs were off leash, and about 8 of those dogs came up to us. And I was really scared that they were going to knock him over. And as you said, if he gets knocked over, it probably will be a broken hip and the end of his life. And the other question I have, so that's my comment. My question is, if this land is in Hingham, and Hingham has a leash law, why is there any question about the leash law?
We're examining these issues from a 360-degree perspective, ma'am. I think some of this has evolved over time, and the activity that's going on there now has prompted this discussion to occur. That's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to blame anybody. We're not trying to find fault with any particular group. We're just trying to figure out a solution. So that's why we're not making any decisions now, because I think that we still have more work to do. But we are recognizing some of the problems, and these letters have been very helpful in kind of raising our consciousness to some of those issues. So,
If somebody were walking their dog in Hingham Square off leash, what would happen to them?
I think I can answer that if you would. The leash law that the town of Hingham has is identical essentially to what we have in Bear Cove Park. It's voice control. You have to have a leash with you at all times. You have to have the dog under your voice control. So that would be the answer. Now, voice control, I think something we have to have some conversation about, because when I read those letters, it's clear that not everybody understands what voice control is. That's a completely different thing. Your dog is a mile ahead of you, roughing around a field, and you can't see him. Your dog's not on voice control. If you scream on the top of your lungs for Fido to come back to you, and eventually he comes back to you, that's not voice control. That was interesting. I was going to ask the chief if he might, at a later point in time, in a different setting, maybe have some of the animal control folks that we have in his department talk to you about what voice control is with an animal. It is a very well-defined characteristic, and maybe we should have to talk about that at some point in time down the road as we get into these solutions.
Yes, and out of these 8 dogs that came up to us, I mean, they're friendly. You know, they're not coming up in a belligerent way. But not one of the owners said, you know, Bozo, come back, or sit, or down, or anything. Okay. And so I was really quite shocked, actually. But I can't bring him back there for a walk, and he loves to walk.
Thank you. Thank you for coming tonight.
yes, ma'am.
Good evening.
Hi.
I'm Susan McMillan Keynes, no relation to Scott, except in the mists of time. I live at 215 Main Street, and I'm here tonight as a professional conservation biologist, land manager, with a Master of Science degree in Natural Resources Management and Conservation Biology. My dissertation was on the status of biodiversity preservation in the United States from Columbia University. So I speak to you as a person in the field who knows what she's talking about, and has observed this issue since 1970, when I began working for the National Audubon Society, followed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, where I managed 1,500 acres for the state, one person by myself, doing all the management, law enforcement, education, interpretation, and maintenance. And I got 4 helpers at that time, but they were general relief workers, and I got them to help me do maintenance. But I gave $500 tickets to people for picking endangered species and confronted lots of people. However, at Bear Cove Park, I have no commission from the state or from the town as I did in Ohio. I don't carry a weapon as I did in Ohio. And I confront people, and I find myself verbally abused, ignored, mimicked, and so on. Very childish behavior and irresponsible behavior. But I'm here because what I want to say first is that why people go to Bear Cove Park, they go there because of the natural environment. It's different than the asphalt jungle that we are in the Boston ecoregion, Boston Harbor ecoregion. We have biodiversity there that is attempting to grow. And I've been away. I was the ranger from 2001 to 2004. And when I was there, we didn't have as much usage, and there certainly weren't that many dogs, but of course there were thousands of dog problems. At that time, I noticed the problems, but I went away for 10 years and helped manage a 120,000 acre ranch on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota, where we had wild wolves that caused fewer problems. We also had coyotes, coy wolves, which we have here. When I came back, the problems were exponential. The erosion and the degradation to the habitat structures there had quadrupled. But not too many people are looking at it. I always had the feeling I was the only one, because I didn't know the other people if they were looking at it. I've subsequently found a few others, and I reached out to some others to find out what they knew. And when I compiled my inventory, natural resources inventory, of the vertebrates and invertebrates there, that list is compiled from my time as a ranger and my time back here with lists from the South Shore Bird Club. And so it's somewhat incomplete, and it's also been divided by time. That's not to say those things are still there. Chances are they're not. But in this time where we live in what biologists and ecologists are calling the sixth extinction, and we are one of the few areas in the Northeast, in Massachusetts, that has the kinds of habitat that's developing and growing, it seems irresponsible to me to manage for dogs when the wildlife is what is there first, which is why everybody comes. I mean, the natural habitat is why people come. I don't believe that we're charged as a community to preserve dogs. We're charged as a community to preserve the quality of that place and the safety of that place. Dogs running loose precludes doing that. If you have 5,000 predators a week or whatever it is, a month, running all over the place, and I see it every time, and it makes me heartsick, because I go in the woods to avoid the dogs. And even in the woods, just last week I met up with a man, and I won't call him a gentleman, which law enforcement people are taught to do, because he was no gentleman. And his dogs rushed up to me, and they would have jumped on me, but I hissed at him and snarled at him. And then he called to them. Of course, they didn't come. Meanwhile, they'd pooped in the woods. That's why the people of Lincoln, Mass, loved having all that conservation land. My friend lived there. 15 years ago, there were two people who were, one was a doctor, as she told me. You may consider this hearsay, but someone might want to research this. The doctor and her friend were knocked over by two St. Bernards, and they were mauled, went to the hospital, and the whole town got sued. And then the woman who chased her loose dog out onto Sandy Pond, on Sandy Pond Road, and the dog, off leash, didn't weigh as much as she did. She fell through the ice and died. The point is that loose dogs cause a lot of difficulties, more so than loose wolves and loose coyotes, and they're out there, coy wolves. Relating to the green hats, I went through training with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources Ranger program, and also an FBI self-defense person who came in and taught us how to use the PR-24 and how to defend ourselves when we have nothing on us. I always carry mace or pepper spray. Now I understand I don't have to have a license, but I still carry it. So I feel bad for the dog who comes after me.
You know how to use a PR-24?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't carry one. And anyway, the last part of that is if we were to have green hats go out that are volunteers, would they know what to do if they confronted the man that I confronted in 2004 running 9 dogs? I knew what to do, and I didn't go up to him. I got out of my car, and I stood up on it, and I looked at him over the roof without my weapons, and I asked him, "Are those your dogs running loose?" And he goes, "Yeah," and then he called me a bad name. I said, "That's not my name. You can call me Dr. Keynes. And until the police get here, I'm the law, and you're going to get your dogs out of here." And he said, "Yes, Dr. Keynes." And I think I tapped into some kind of educational insecurity. But he left because I kind of knew what I was doing. And I don't think green hats, if you're a woman and you're wearing a green hat and you go out and say, "Oh, would you please, whatever," or "Would you do it," people aren't going to do it because I've been doing it, and they don't respond except in a childish way. The other thing is that, I do think that there is a way, but there is a way. You might not like this idea, but there are plenty of natural resource personnel in this state, in this country, who can't find jobs, who have skill, know what to do, and they understand what's out there and why they're doing it. I don't know who looked at the paper that I wrote, but I have a feeling that most people have not looked at it, and they don't have a sense of what is at stake here. We are one of the few stops in New England in a coastal area with an estuary supporting 31 species of fishes that are part of our food supply, and what we put on the land goes right into the waters. Do we want dog poop and E. coli all over those beds of shellfish and the 31 species and the herring and everything up to the Gulf of Maine? And that's in the documentation in this town related to this as part of our food supply. And it's called surface runoff, and it goes into the waters and it pollutes with E. coli and other bacterial infections. So that's what we're dealing with also. This park has been designated with 4 designations in the state, including a critical environmental area. So why aren't we talking environment? Why am I only the one doing it? Why is it always we're not fair to the dog owners? In this case, it's not about fairness. It's about what is the right thing to do. We do not have to manage for dogs. This is not a dog park. This is a critical environmental area, of which there are very few in New England. And so I know majority rules, and there are more dog people, but I just had to say that. Finally, I'd like to say I'm retired and I have 3 jobs. And because I know something about the natural area, people on the committee are perfectly willing to have me do everything that has to do with educate everybody else. I've done that my whole life. I'm retired. So that's what I have to say. Thank you for listening.
Well, thank you very much. That's a hard one to follow up, so anybody who wants to is welcome to try. Yes, there we go. Courage. Yes.
Rebecca Wetzel, 35 High Street. I sent a letter to each of you.
Got it.
From what you've said, I have a very strong feeling you all read it. And, having said that, my question for you this evening is, can you make a motion moving forward as to what the next step is exactly? Whether that's a time frame with a specific time, or can we leaving tonight know where this is going? Because I know you said nothing specific is going to be voted on, but I'd love to know if there's just going to be a little bit more direction moving forward.
I can speak for myself.
Why don't you start?
You know, I wanted to absorb the comments of the audience. I'm sure, you know, I recognize a lot of the names from the letters that were written, and I thought it would be helpful for my own personal evolution here to hear what else is being said. I'm sure that we're going to continue to get more letters, and I'll craft a framework of ideas. I'll communicate that with the town administrator. Presumably my colleagues will do the same, and hopefully we can come up with a plan going forward. To give you a time frame now would be irresponsible, or to even say what I think we should do, because I have to think about that. And I don't, you know, I know people like certainty. I think we heard that thematically with signs and enforcement and this and that. But in terms of the ideas for the planning and the ability to respond and use resources, the doctor's comments, I think, has injected another interesting aspect to the conversation that until that point I hadn't quite heard that as forcefully, but clearly that's a strong issue that we can't ignore, and we'd be remiss if we did. So that's where I am on this. I love planning, so it's not something I would shy away from doing. But I'm one person, and we're in a three-legged race, and I mean we'll do this.
Faith in the words. I wouldn't have voted for you three if I didn't.
Thank you. Thank you. That is great follow-up. Well done. Yes, ma'am. We're going out of order here. We're going back this way. What's up? You were supposed to raise your hand when I was going this way.
My name is Jane Gilmartin, 6 West in Hingham. And I want to speak to, partly to the environmental aspect. I don't know if you remember, but I walked with you one day.
Can you address your comments to the...
I walked with the doctor one day.
Okay.
With my dog.
Okay.
And she educated me on a couple of the spots that I had never known about. One of which she talked about tonight that holds the 31 species of...
fish.
I think.
Shellfish.
Anyway, I've been walking in that park for years and have never seen a sign. If I had seen a sign, even just a little plaque like you do see in a lot of public parks, this place is important because I wouldn't let my dog down there. My other point I want to make is the regulations that were proposed by the Bear Cove Park Committee were going to allow off-leash dogs in that area, only in that area, that direction, where that specific estuary is.
You know, I
And
think
that
it's
made
going to
no
be an
sense.
educational process for everyone.
I agree.
In fairness.
I just think you need to give people credit that if they are educated, they're going, and they're going to,
They need to get a chance.
yes.
I hear you. Yes. Good.
Hello, Liz Esmond, 150 Donellan Circle. I usually don't speak because I get really nervous, so forgive me. One of the things I've noticed, I don't know if you guys know, I started the Bear Cove Advocacy Facebook page. There has been an immense amount of volunteer support that has come out of all of these meetings. I think to not harness that and take that and just run as far and as fast as we can and take advantage of all the people that are sitting right here. They want this place to be awesome. That's all, thank you.
All right, thank you so much. All right, I think we've covered the gambit, and I want to thank... There's always one. There you go.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Bruce Mullen, 39 Back River Road.
I know you.
I sent you all an email the other night. I would just like to make a comment. I've only been a resident of Hingham for the last 7 years. We moved to this area. Bear Cove Park is, as everybody says, it's a gem. I think there's signs refer to it as a sanctuary. What I would suggest is that you have a big sign at all the entrances with actually saying you are now entering a sanctuary, treat it like one. I think we need some common sense guidelines. With regard to the rules, whatever rules you come up with, they absolutely have to be enforced. There is, over the 7 years that I've lived there, the amount of interactions that I've had with people, and it just gets nastier and nastier. I'm a dog owner. My dogs are on lead. They're off leash. I've had interactions with my dogs on a lead. I've had interactions with my dog off a leash. I'm very apologetic. I'll bring them under the control. I walk. I run. The deterioration of the conditions in the park over the last 7 years has been amazing to me. Is just. Even yesterday, my wife and a friend of hers were walking without any dogs. A dog came around the corner, nobody in sight, did its business on the side of the road. The people eventually came around the corner. My wife's friend said to them, "Excuse me, you're supposed to have your dog under sight and voice control." They said, "What are you talking about? We've been coming here for years. We don't know anything about that rule." So again, just to reiterate, the signage, there has to be increased signage, there's got to be a lot more enforcement, and I would encourage you, whatever your deliberations are, that you actually take some action soon, because this thing is definitely it's deteriorating day by day, and I think the relationships and the animosity in the park is rising, and I think that's the one that you actually, Bear Cove Committee or whatever, needs to get in control of. Last comments. Scott is the other gem in Bear Cove Park. Thank you for all you do, Scott.
Yeah.
That would be a good note to end this discussion, unless my colleagues want to add anything further. I think we've heard a good cross-sampling. I thank all of you for the respectful way that you've presented your views. And been respectful of each other. That's made this a much easier conversation to have. I look forward to some productive steps going forward. We'll probably circle back shortly and announce what those are. To the extent that you haven't already done so and wish to do so, you're certainly welcome to add, your comments in email or letter form. You can certainly call us. I like the idea of a record because it makes it very clear where people are. And then we'll just take this up shortly. So thank you for coming and good night. You're welcome to stay, but you don't have
I didn't like the way this was posted on the notice.
Notice of the meeting?
Yeah. It just said regulations in Bear Cove Park. It was all about the dogs. That should have been in there, dogs.
I don't set the agenda.
No, I'm just commenting. I'm just commenting. Stuff I gave you.
Be interested on sitting on a committee?
Stuff I gave you.
No, we're still in session.
The terms, all the terms, what do we mean by sanctuary? What do we mean by voice control? I think that's a big part of the education process.
Because...
All right, Bob, we're still in meeting.
We're not done.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's, no.
Thank you.
Okay.
1 minute, I'm just going to get some water. I was hot. I was trying to get your attention at some point to press that button.
I did.
No, thank you. I'm just going to get some water quick.
Oh, Maron. All right, that went well. Peace in the valley.
We're going to do this, Mary. Are you going to take us through this, or you want me to?
Whatever you prefer.
No, it's whatever you prefer.
You want some water?
I'm all set.
My teeth are going to float away.
I didn't offer it, so no private lunch. I'll do it if you want me to. Put it that way. So how's that? Give you a sense of flavor.
I'll take it.
Okay.
All right.
elder thing?
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
That went well, Ted.
Let me get the store.
All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We're moving, we're moving on. And the next item for discussion is the town forum discussion, which we anticipate having on October 18th, is it?
18th.
At Town Hall, right?
Yeah, right here in Sanborn Auditorium.
Middle
Oh, sorry,
school.
no.
Hingham Middle School.
Hingham Middle
Okay,
School.
right, sorry.
No. It's where it always used to be. Now we're going to enjoy the new middle school. Thank you.
Good seating.
I just said it's the Arts Walk is that day, the same hours, 12 to 3. Do you know that?
We didn't at the time we said it, but we looked at every other possible thing.
I'm keeping it saying.
Well, the location we can certainly look at. All right, Ted, where are we on this?
I think Mary was going to take us through the agenda structure that we have here.
Sure. So, I know I've talked as we've set our goals and other things about kind of resurrecting the town forum and having it earlier, and as I've talked about that, one of the suggestions that I've made, and I will again make tonight, is that the one of the focuses of this forum is on our buildings. And the reason I say that is that we have a lot of building projects that are going to be, that could be contemplated by the town. Most immediately at the annual town meeting in 2016, the North Fire Station Building Committee will most likely be putting a renovation request forward. I think for citizens, it's, they hear things about different facilities, different possibilities, and I have this idea that it might be hard to make a vote on a couple $1 million project without kind of having a sense of the picture. So in doing that, I just put together a straw agenda really for the purpose that we could kind of work through it and talk through it and see what we like, see what we want to change. And so we have a two-hour block of time. One of the suggestions I would make is that we structure this in a way where we don't have any more than 50% of the time presentation. What I don't want to do is sort of talk at an audience for an hour and 45 minutes and then say, kind of, what do you think? I just feel like we're talking about this saying being part of the conversation, so that means starting with giving folks an opportunity. So I think we want to be thoughtful about that. I also recognize that while we have kind of building issues or potential building projects on the municipal side, I think our practice has been with the town forum to also give the school department, the administration, and the school committee an opportunity to participate as well, because they are such a big department in the town. So I'm trying to be thoughtful of that. I also think we ought to make sure that there's some time for people to ask questions about things that aren't on the agenda, and making sure that we've devoted some time for that. So what you have before you is a thought, a little bit of an overview of the town capital assets, which would be, what are we thinking about town hall? What are we thinking about the senior center? What's going on with the fire department? And then perhaps ask the school department to sort of do the same thing with the school, because I know there's talk about potential projects. The next thing to me that would make sense is a little bit of discussion about town finances. How are we going to pay for all this? Because I think that again, that's going to lead to some decisions. I don't see us coming out of this forum with any, hard decisions. To me, it's a chance to educate, inform, get feedback. I know for me, sitting in this chair, knowing that we have a lot of potential projects, I'm interested in knowing which ones the folks that are going to pay for this feel are most important. What do they want to see advanced? So anyway, this is a starting point. looking forward to reactions on it.
Okay, I think the 230 to 250 will be the interesting block. Open forum.
So, a couple of thoughts. Mary, thank you for doing this.
What's that?
I don't know what people are going to want to talk about. I know that these are all important things, though, so I know that. But what I would do is ask people, the power of email, basically, to maybe reach out to us and let us know what you think about the proposed agenda and what you might want to talk about, because one of the blocks, as Paul said, that I'm interested in is the 230 to 250, and I'm hoping we have a big enough crowd where that might not be enough time, and we might roll over by a little, which is fine with me, by the way. But I just don't. I know we only have so much time to talk, and that's so. I like what you put down. I thank you for doing it. But if people have any suggestions, we do have some time occasionally to read an email or two. So
I'll say.
But it is helpful if you let us know. And it's certainly, we could make adjustments as we get closer. It isn't that far away, really, right? But I'm comfortable with this setup as long as we leave a little bit of time if we go over on that 230 to 250.
Yeah. And I think we, again, because I'm thinking that we're going to not have a lot of big presentations, it's going to kind of make it a little bit more fluid. I do want to be conscious of giving Ted, Sue, the school department, kind of enough time for them to, if we're going to ask them to put something together, that they do that. So
seems like a pretty good balance to me. I think you've nailed it right. The water company issue could just loom large.
How about this as a suggestion, which is, Paul, I think your suggestion about things that are on people's mind, because again, that will be very helpful. I want to compel people to come to the meetings, so the topics have to be of interest to people. Perhaps we could take another look at this in 2 weeks and see if we've gotten any other feedback. But perhaps along the way, maybe start to, reach out to the school department, reach out to Dr. Gallo, so that, we might adjust the time a little bit, but we can still kind of get things moving, if that works for both of you.
Sure. Absolutely, thank you.
But Ted, would you do that? Would you be reaching out if we, letting those departments know?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Let's move on. It's getting late. Covered a lot of ground tonight, but we still have a few miles to go before we sleep. Okay. Next, we're going to do an appointment, and this is for the associate member of the planning board. The chair has sent us a memo recommending Richard Cook to serve as that associate. I know Dick Cook served on the planning board for 15 years, and he has been a very valued contributor to a lot of efforts subsequent to that time. So unless there's anybody that wants to talk about that, I'll entertain a motion that we vote to appoint Richard Cook as the associate member of the planning board for a one-year term.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
We now have a series of votes for all alcoholic beverages. So, Mary, would you?
I think you want the Downtown Association as their first vote.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I'm ahead of myself here.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the request of the Hingham Downtown Association to use the sidewalks for the Hingham Arts Walk on Sunday, October 18th, 2015, from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m.
Second.
Discussion, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye. Ted, we probably want to circle back with Betty about the forum.
Correct.
We now on the tree and barn park?
Yes.
I put this request forward to you folks. We are getting to the stage where the lease that we have with the current tenant of the Tree and Park Barn is coming to a conclusion. We've been communicated with the tenant, and they've indicated they'd like to continue on. We originally leased the Tree and Park Barn as a short-term solution till the town could figure out what to do with this property. I think most of us know that unoccupied buildings don't survive very well, and so we felt this was a good way to get a little activity in the building, and provide some revenue to the town and stabilize the structure so that when the town decided what it wanted to do with it long term, it would be there for it. Trying to understand that we can't always forecast what the town's needs are 10, 20, or 30 years down the road, but we're at that point now where we have to make a decision. Next year we'll have to issue, or shortly we'll have to issue an RFP for a 3-year license or a lease on the property. We can't do any more than 3 years without going back to town meeting. And we didn't go back to town meeting the first time on this because, again, it was a short-term solution, not a long-term solution.
Ted, can you maybe just tell people who the tenant is and basically what they...
Sure. We actually, I think, have the tenant with us. I don't know if he'd like to come on up and introduce himself, and he could tell us more about him than I can. I think, I know he makes great furniture.
I'm Dick Warren. I'm the tenant at 8 Short Street. I am a furniture maker, and yes, so I have been there, as Ted had said, now for 4 years. It was a 3-year lease with 1 2-year extension option, which I elected to take. So now we're just entering my last year there. I very much would like to stay. It's been very, very good for me, and I think I like to think it's also worked well for the town. It seems to be working out very nicely. So that's where I've been making a pest of myself there in your office to see about this lease. And I know that there's, of course, there's a process that has to be followed. So I'm delighted to see maybe it's going to come up again for consideration.
And so rather than for me just to issue an RFP, I'm bringing it to you. This is in my opinion, this is a line of demarcation for where my responsibilities end and yours really begin. This is a town asset. I can give you advice on it, but really it's your decision as to what you want to do with it. So that's why I've brought it to you. I'm not going to issue an RFP without your permission.
I'm just going to inform members of the public. I hired Mr. Orr to do some work at my house. Did a great job. Very happy with the work. I don't think that affects my ability to take a vote on this issue, but I don't want it said later. I didn't disclose it, so I'm doing it now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Does great work.
It's my understanding that you've also made some improvements to the building itself.
Yes.
Dick, you have to talk close to the mic there, otherwise no one can hear you.
That was part of the original agreement on the lease, that I would restore the front doors, the 2 front doors, which I have, as well as build and install interior storm windows there on the first floor, which is where I occupy. Can't do anything on the exterior, which I wouldn't want to do anyway, but so I did build interior storm windows, which made a tremendous improvement in there, and then I've also painted on the interior. And I must say, I've also then sort of been an advocate for the building for my own sake, as well as for the building. I've spearheaded sort of twice with the CPC, which they funded a painting of the building 2 years ago, and now most recently restoration of the 20 windows in the building be restored.
Thank you.
We have a motion?
Sure. Make a motion to issue a request for proposal for the lease of the Tree and Park Barn on Short Street.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dick.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, now we can get to the all alcoholic beverages license. Who would like to do that?
So I'll make a motion to approve the issuance of a special one-day all-alcohol beverage license to the Conservatory of Music, care of William Arvanites, hopefully I said that right, for the Hingham Jazz Festival at the Conservatory of Music on Saturday, September 19th, 2015, and Sunday, September 20th, from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Second.
Discussion, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye. Make a motion to approve the issuance of a special one-day all-alcoholic beverages license to the Hingham Sports Partnership, care of Christine Falvey, for Oktoberfest, celebrating Hingham Sports Partnership's 20th anniversary, at the Hingham Armory on Friday, October 30th, 2015, from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye. Move to approve the issuance of a special one-day wine and malt beverages license to the Silent Chef on behalf of the Hingham Cemetery Chapel for the Hingham Cemetery Chapel's open house to be held at 40 Water Street on September 27, 2015, from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Ted?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I have one bit of good news for you here that I would like to share with you. My papers got a little disorganized in our long meeting here, but I was given a check today by the Secretary, the Attorney General's office, and the check must be in my office on the desk, but I'll track it down because it's fairly large. We won't. I'm sure no one else will cash it. I'll hand you each a press release that was given to me for about a month ago. It was issued, and you're receiving a check today for about $132,000 from the Attorney General as a result of a construction company settlement for $1.4 million to resolve false claims and allegations. Again, it was a settlement. There's been no admission of guilt. The Attorney General spoke with, the Commonwealth's complaint alleges that CTA Construction, MDR Construction, a minority-owned business, enterprise, Luxor Equipment Corporation, violated the Massachusetts False Claims Act in 3 contracts. And the reason why we're talking about it is the 3 contracts included a 2006 contract with the Massachusetts DCAM regarding an Curtis Air National Base in Reading, a 2008 contract with the Port Authority, and a 2008 contract with the town of Hingham to build the East Elementary School. So the project, of course, at the East Elementary School was done many, many years ago, and it was completed on budget, actually under budget, and ahead of schedule. This settlement has no impact or relationship with the school committee's outstanding work, building committee and the school department in building the school. This is something that was undertaken by the Attorney General, independent of the town of Hingham, and we are receiving the proceeds because the damages were to us. So in essence, the claim alleges that we paid too much to those contractors because they got preferential treatment by being minority-owned businesses. Great work on the part of the Attorney General's office. They've kept me informed as this was going forward. I've spoken with the school superintendent to let them know. And I will remind you that East School was built with a combination of money from the state of Massachusetts, the School Building Administration Program, and taxpayer dollars through a debt exclusion override. It would be my recommendation to you that you take this money and you apply it directly to the taxpayers and essentially give them the rebate back for the overcharging that occurred through the project.
That's great news. Clearly, a little bit of relief to the people paying the bill is in order. So,
how much was it again? 130.
$132,000. It'll represent about 1/3% on the tax rate. So, not a huge amount, but again, good work on the part of the Attorney General to bring this claim to the town of Hingham.
Do we have to vote that?
You do not. No vote.
Can we just do that?
Can you just do what?
So we can give that back?
Oh, I'm going to give you a recommendation. The money is going to be put in the general fund by state law, and it is a general fund receipt. It'll revert to fund balance at the end of the fiscal year, and you can appropriate the money however you see fit. If you want to follow my recommendation, we already have an article in town meeting to reduce the tax rate for other things. For example, we still are reducing the tax rate for the sale of the former police station, the light plant, the school administration building when we moved into this building 15 years ago. So again, that's an article that you would have to use. You'd have to appropriate it. The board can only make a recommendation. Only town meeting can make that decision.
Thank you.
Oh.
Yes, Mr. Hersey.
Did you just say the former police station?
Yes.
169 Lincoln Street.
That's sold?
It was leased for 99 years, Mr. Hersey. It was not sold.
You know it wasn't sold, okay. Okay.
Sorry, I stand corrected. We took those proceeds from the 99-year lease and applied it to the tax rate.
How much does that come to a month?
I don't have those numbers with me today, but I can get them to you if you want to ask me in my office.
Very small.
It's not a large number, correct. But it was
Okay.
designed to offset this project here.
It's 10:17, and would any of my colleagues like to add anything before we adjourn for the evening?
Just maybe really quickly, the McCord Foundation on October 3rd is going to have a bike ride out of Wampatuck. They've done it the last few years. We just had something before us a few weeks ago. And I just, anybody who has the stamina or the will to participate, they're raising money in the fight with against MS and Alzheimer's. And I know the organization, they do a great job. And just want to let people know, if they, October 3rd, if they have nothing to do, they can either ride or they can come down and support a good cause.
There you go. Thank you.
You had it.
I would just say that last night I had the privilege of sitting in on the beginning of the 52nd, Glenn? Yes. Citizens Police Academy. And so that started, it's a 10-week program, and a full class, a waiting list, and it's a great thing for the citizens who participate. It's great for the community. It's a terrific thing that you and your officers do. I know other town departments participate, so we will look forward to seeing them at their graduation on November 18th.
Sounds good. I'd like to recognize those individuals that put on the 9/11 ceremony. We all work, but we all gathered for that. That was a girls' soccer game last Friday night at the high school field, and the color guard was there, and from both Norwell and Hingham that played, and that was very well done. So my compliments there. The veterans were a part of that too. You know, like I say, we all get various invitations to go to social events, you know, in conjunction with our roles here as selectmen. Today, Mary and I attended a luncheon, a volunteer appreciation luncheon for the Elder Services volunteers. And ladies and gentlemen, I just have to tell you, there were over 10,000 hours of volunteerism in that room. Very, very impressive. So my sincere congratulations to everybody that volunteers in that aspect of our community, and my particular congratulations to one Margaret Taylor, who makes the world more beautiful to those that come through the doors. She does the gardening there, and a very lovely woman, and it was very nice to see that. So with that, I'll say good night, unless Mr. Hersey has another question.
No, I'm all done.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.